Chapter 16:24. Just as Xiao Hua was trembling with fear, the Taiching sect disciple said, "Good. Martial Uncle Mingcheng, someone used a magic treasure in the illusion realm." The illusion realm's illusion formation was disrupted by the magic treasure's power, and all of the recorded images were destroyed. Nothing could be seen at all. These words were like music to Xiao Hua's ears, and he was secretly delighted. However, he frowned and said, "Senior Ming Cheng, that's not good. My grievances can't be cleared. No, your sect must find a way to recover those records, or else. You can use magic treasures?" Ming Cheng didn't answer Xiao Hua's words, and he looked Xiao Hua up and down in shock. "It's not this senior brother Xiao. It's another Changbai sect disciple," the Taiching sect disciple hurriedly said. "And it's a fragment of a magic treasure." What? It was fine if Ming Cheng didn't listen, but when he heard it, he was even more shocked. He was even more shocked than when he heard that Xiao Hua could use magic treasures. After all, Xiao Hua was only an early-stage 12th Qi refinement disciple. Seeing Ming Cheng looking at him, Xiao Hua bowed with a bitter face and said, "Senior Ming Cheng, please make the decision." Ming Cheng smiled and said, "Since martial nephew Xiao doesn't have a storage bag, and the Imperial Thunder Sect disciple doesn't have a storage bag, then the spirit pet that the Changbai sect disciple mentioned can't be on either of them. Besides, spirit pets aren't ordinary things. How can they be taken away so easily?" Martial Uncle Ming Cheng is right. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. "I've never seen any spirit pets." Senior Ming Cheng, Yi hurriedly said. But before Senior Brother Fan entered the illusion array, there was indeed a spirit pet in his storage bag. I saw it with my own eyes. Then when you took Senior Brother Fan's body, did you check the storage bag? Did you find that the spirit pet disappeared? Ming Cheng frowned. "I checked the storage bag, but this storage bag, it wasn't there." Yi looked at Lu Sishu, who was gnashing his teeth, and said in a low voice, "Yes, that's it." Since Xiao Hua didn't check the spirit storage pouch in front of him, the things inside the spirit storage pouch had nothing to do with him. This is the rule of the Feather Immortal Assembly. All of you should go back. Ming Cheng shook his head and said, "Since Senior Brother Liao Zhoquan didn't come, it means that he knows what to do. If you have any other ideas, let him come to I or Senior Brother Renju." In front of a Foundation Establishment cultivator, Lu Sishu, "Hi," and the others didn't dare to say anything. After bowing, they left with their tails between their legs. Many thanks to Martial Uncle Mingcheng for upholding justice. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, "This disciple is endlessly grateful." Of course. Ming Cheng waved his hand and said, "The Feather Immortal Assembly is a reasonable place. How can you blame others for your missing pet?" "That's right," Xiao Hua agreed. "Martial nephew Xiao, rest early. There are still 4 rounds of matches tomorrow." Ming Cheng nodded slightly and turned to leave. A few Taiching sect disciples followed him. Xiao Hua walked him to the door of the quiet room. Looking at Ming Cheng's back, he couldn't help but feel very lucky in his heart. "Good boy, I thought I did it without anyone noticing. Who knew that this illusion array actually had such a powerful use? I'm sure the illusion array has already remembered my methods." After thinking for a while, he took out the Devil Spear Point and Devil Spear Shaft. Fortunately, the Devil Hammer wasn't remembered by the illusion array. Anyway, since Xiao Hua had the Devil Hammer, he probably wouldn't use the Devil Spear Point and Devil Spear Shaft very often in the future. He wasn't afraid that others would know. Besides, in fights of magical powers, magical tools and magical treasures were the right way to go. Using force to break through magical powers could only catch the opponent off guard and couldn't be used too often. It seems that tomorrow, I'll have to hide my abilities. I can't give them any more life and death experiences. What does it have to do with me, whether you build your foundation or not? Xiao Hua turned and entered the room. If it's Fairy Hong Xiao, this penniless priest might consider it. Sai, Ruanhua sect, and Imperial Thunder sect weren't placed together. I wonder if Fairy Hong Xia passed the 4 rounds today? Xiao Hua thought to himself. He gradually calmed down and entered a meditative state. However, just as he took a soul-gathering pill and prepared to cultivate, The restriction of the quiet room flickered again. Motherfucker, are you done yet? Xiaohua was furious. He jumped up from the ground and removed the restriction of the quiet room. He didn't even bother to use his divine sense to scan the room. He opened the door and shouted, "Brats from Changbai sect, do you want to die?" Xiaohua, what is the meaning of this? How can you treat Senior Liao like this? Zhen Qing's very strict voice sounded. Ah, Senior Liao? Xiaohua looked. Wasn't Liao Zhouquan behind Zhen Qing? At this moment, Liao Zhouquan's expression was extremely ugly. Xiaohua saw this and hurriedly bowed. Senior Liao, it's all my fault. I wasn't talking about you. Then, Xiaohua bowed to Deming, who was beside Liao Zhouquan. Junior greets Senior Deming. Deming's expression was also unhappy. He nodded indifferently. This is bad, Xiaohua secretly complained. He regretted not using his divine sense to check first. Martial nephew Xiao is amazing. My Changbai sect disciples can be killed by you, Liao Zhouquan said coldly. Zhen Qing glared at Xiaohua and scolded. What is going on? I know that you have always been humble. I'll let the three seniors know. Xiaohua asked the three seniors to enter the room and sit down. He stood respectfully and told the whole story. Then he said, Disciple really didn't take any spiritual pets, so I can't take out any spiritual insects. Senior Deming, please understand. Oh, so it's like this. Deming's expression softened. He looked at Liao Zhouquan and said, This is Changbai sect's disciple's fault. Fellow Liao, you have to restrain them. I understand. Liao Zhouquan's expression was even uglier than before. He cupped his hands and said, I know about this matter. I have already told them not to harass martial nephew Xiao, but I will definitely punish them severely when I return. It's not about the spiritual pets? Xiaohua immediately understood. Of course it's about the storage bag. So Xiaohua took out the storage bag and threw it on the ground. He smiled and said, Senior Deming, Senior Liao, did you two come here for this storage bag? Liao Zhouquan threw the storage bag on the ground in front of him. His eyes twitched a few times. He looked at Zhen Qing awkwardly. Seeing Zhen Qing's cold face, he looked at Deming again. Deming sighed and reached out his hand. The storage bag flew into his hand. When he opened the storage bag, even though Deming was a late-stage golden core cultivator, his expression still changed. After a while, he closed the storage bag and threw it to Zhen Qing. He said, Fellow Jin, you also didn't look at it. Let's take a look first. Yes. Zhen Qing took the storage bag. Her expression was the same as Deming's. Taoist Jin, now you should know why I'm so thick-skinned as to come and find you, right? Liao Zhouquan smiled bitterly as he spoke with sincerity. Sigh. Zhen Qing sighed again. She threw the storage bag to Xiaohua and said, This thing doesn't belong to Fantong, right? Yes. Liao Zhouquan smiled and said, This is my annual tribute. Fantong is the disciple who gives out the tributes. Xiaohua, do you think you dare to take these spirit stones and pills? Deming asked kindly. Why wouldn't I dare? Xiaohua said curiously. I won these legitimately. Why wouldn't I dare to take them? Deming smiled and said, You're right. This is the rule of the Feather Immortal Gathering. Our Taiching sect should naturally protect you. But have you ever thought that what you won should be Fantong's personal things? But these are the common things of the Changbai sect. You don't know why you took them. They are all in Fantong's storage bag. Even if they're the common things, they are still his personal things. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said, making him spit out the fat meat from his mouth really made his heart ache. Xiaohua, listen to Senior Deming. Zhen Qing scolded. The common things are naturally the common things. They won't be his personal things. Deming waved his hand at Zhen Qing, indicating that it was fine. He said, Of course, if the common things are too little and you say they are your personal things, our Taiching sect will also accept it. We will accompany you to carry out the rules of the Feather Immortal Gathering to the end. But the amount of spirit stones and pills is so huge. Don't you think they might be his personal things? Xiaohua muttered a few words, but he didn't say it clearly. Although the spirit stones and pills in my space are less than 10% of the things in the storage bag, Those spirit herbs are not less than these. The amount is so huge that it is enough to make the Changbai sect and the Imperial Thunder sect fall out. It is enough for our Tai Ching sect to think carefully. It is enough for me to come out and discuss with you. Seeing that Xiao Hua was about to speak again, Deming didn't give him a chance. He said, "Little friend Xiao, don't talk about the rules of the Feather Immortal Gathering. They're all set by people. Today, it is like this. Tomorrow, it might be like that. Also, the Changbai sect gave enough face to our Tai Ching sect and the Imperial Thunder sect on the battle square. In I's opinion, little friend Xiao, you should stop while you are ahead. Rules are set by people. Today, it is like this. Tomorrow, it might be like that." This sentence was like a thunderbolt that shattered the last bit of hope in Xiao Hua's heart. Yes, Xiao Hua was only relying on the rules of the Feather Immortal Gathering. The Tai Ching sect had changed the rules. What was there to say? These rules are set by people. They are set by people with great power. I don't have the right to set these rules now. I have to accept these rules that don't exist yet. One day, I will set the rules myself. I will set the rules that all of you will have to submit to. Xiao Hua thought to himself. Xiao Hua, I have the same thoughts as Senior Deming. This storage bag still needs to be returned to the Changbai sect. Zhenxing said softly. Also, 5 disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect and the Changbai sect have died in the battle today. Dui Mingyue of the Heavenly Thunder Palace and Qian Qingqi of the Heavenly Thunder Palace. This is only the first day. It is much more tragic than expected. I understand. Xiao Hua was sad. Although these 2 disciples didn't say much to him, Xiao Hua still felt uncomfortable when he thought about how they had died. Chapter 16:25. A light green light flashed, and a dozen odd green seal characters faintly flowed within the light. Following the light, they slowly flowed into the forehead of a female cultivator. Every time a green seal character entered the forehead of a female cultivator, the female cultivator's brows slightly wrinkled. When all the green seal characters entered, the female cultivator's face became even more unsightly and actually slightly pale. Fellow Taoist Dong Shan, when these green seal characters enter I's mind, why is it so strange? Why does my head hurt so much? The female cultivator opened her mouth to speak. It was Xuanyin School's sect master, Fairy Yingzhua. This was a rather large secret chamber. The secret chamber was flashing with brilliance from top to bottom, left to right. Within the brilliance, countless runes were faintly discernible, showing that the restriction was very strict. About 10 feet in front of Fairy Yingzhua, there was a dark brown figure covered in a black cloak. No matter how one looked at it with their eyes or spiritual sense, they could not see the figure clearly. The light green brilliance was emitted from the sleeve of this figure. What peeked out of the sleeve was a black, furry finger that was only 3 inches long. Fellow Taoist Ding Zhua, I already told you that practicing talismans uses the power of the soul. Only with an incomparably tyrannical body can the main body not be harmed. The green seal characters bear the power of the world soul. Although fellow Taoist is a nascent soul cultivator, learning the green seal characters will still affect fellow Taoist soul. An extremely hoarse voice came from the black cloak, and the words were rather obscure. And I know, since I cultivated to nascent soul from qi refining, what kind of pain have I not experienced? Fairy Yingzhua clenched her teeth and said, what does this pain count as? If this talisman is as fellow Taoist Dongshan said, and can let I step into the spirit severing stage, then I will definitely comply with our previous agreement and agree to fellow Taoist conditions. Talisman techniques are the most unfathomable Tao in the world, passed down from the mysterious immemorial era. What does a mere spirit severing stage count as? If it wasn't for the fact that talisman techniques have long been lost in the Donrain continent, why would fellow Taoist Ing Zhuan not trust one? Fellow Taoist Dong Shan said with a smile. How about the cultivation method I passed to you? With this method, your Xuanyin school will be able to cultivate many outstanding disciples. Why worry about the school's prosperity? I'll let you know, fellow Taoist Dongshan. Fairy Ing Zhua smiled bitterly and said, fellow Taoist method is not bad, but after all, it is too overbearing. The first time it was used, only 3 disciples were lucky enough to survive. Although their cultivations are now at the 10th level of qi refining, the number of disciples who died is too many. The cultivators of the Dawn Rain continent only cultivate the Tao and the heart. They don't cultivate the body and the soul. Naturally, they can't reach perfection and many dermic formulations are unsuitable. Forget it, fellow Taoist, we should focus on nurturing these 3 disciples first. Let's see how their futures are before we make our next plan. All right, I will listen to your instructions. Fairy Ingzhua smiled and said, please enlighten me on the green seal text. Release your divine sense. Fellow Taoist Easter Mountain said in a low voice. Then an extremely strange and awkward syllable came out from under the cloak. As soon as the syllable was spoken, an indescribable thing swarmed towards it like a swarm of bees. And when Fairy Ingzhua's spiritual will touched the syllable, she immediately felt a tremor from her bone marrow. Then, the syllable turned into a wave and entered Fairy Ingzhua's Niwen Palace. How miraculous! Fairy Ingzhua, who was already a nascent soul cultivator, couldn't help but praise in her heart. How could she still have any doubts? After a long time, Fairy Ingzhua felt that her 3 souls and 7 spirits were brimming with satisfaction. She said in a low voice, fellow Taoist Easter Mountain, please continue. Fellow Taoist Easter Mountain said calmly, tomorrow, only 1 green seal text can be imparted every day. If there are more than 1, it will incur the wrath of heaven and earth. And okay. Fairy Ingzhua nodded. The 2 didn't speak anymore. The entire room was silent. Xiaohua sat upright in the quiet room provided by the Tai Ching sect. He read the green seal text on the white bone into his mind. Then, he looked at the dim white bone. With a wave of his hand, he put it into the space and placed it together with the previous bone. However, right at this moment, Xiaohua discovered that there was a faint flicker of lightning on the white bone. Faintly, there was an extremely dim silver light flashing. Moreover, when the second white bone entered the space, traces of lightning were also produced, surrounding the entire white bone and continuously striking it. What was even more strange was that these 2 white bones couldn't be placed together. They were placed at a fixed angle in the space. The 2 bones were only connected by lightning. These 2 white bones are together? Xiaohua looked at the strange placement of the 2 white bones and couldn't help but think to himself. However, there were only 2 white bones. How could he find any clues? According to Zhu Beibei, her white bones are in the Meng Mountains. It seems that if I have the chance, I should go there and take a look. If I can gather a complete set of bones, what other strange phenomena will occur? Xiaohua was only thinking about it. The Meng Mountains were indeed too far away from him. He wouldn't consider it until he reached the Foundation Establishment or Golden Core level. What he needed to consider now was how to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly. What do those 2 sword cultivators want to exchange for? Xiaohua thought of what Jinxing said before she left. What else could it be? Isn't it just a 6,000 years old dark spiritual grass? But I have never even heard of this dark spiritual grass. How could the Changbai sect have it in their storage bag? Since I have the lingy grass that Master wants, maybe there is also the dark spiritual grass among those rare and unknown spiritual grass? Xiaohua pondered. His top priority was to know what the dark spiritual grass looked like. Only then could he know if it was still alive in his space. Then, Xiaohua took an energy-gathering pill and closed his eyes to cultivate. The next day's competition was also very intense. However, perhaps because of Liao Zhouquan and Jinxing's warning, the disciples of the Changbai sect and the Thunder-controlling sect didn't fight as fiercely as the first day. Xiaohua also got a bye. His first opponent was a disciple of the Changbai sect. The disciple's cultivation was obviously not as strong as Fantong yesterday. He must have known that Fantong died in Xiaohua's hands. Before the fight, he was submissive. If it wasn't for the Changbai sect's reputation, he would have already surrendered. This kind of disciple, Even if he reached the peak of the 12th realm, how can he build his foundation? Xiao Hua sighed in his heart. He was acting like a senior. Sigh. Why doesn't he think about his own cultivation? A cultivator in the early stage of the 12th realm. He is in the late stage of the 12th realm and is likely to build his foundation tomorrow. Why would he fight with you for no reason? Especially when the outcome of the fight was very likely to be his own death. Although he came to the Feather Immortal Gathering to look for the opportunity to build his foundation, he knew that he would die if he fought with you. Anyone would be weak. Since the disciple of the Changbai sect wanted to compromise, Xiao Hua had no objections. The two of them fought for a while. When the time was up, the disciple of the Changbai sect didn't wait for Xiao Hua to speak. He actually escaped from the illusion formation first. That can't be. I still want to go out. Xiao Hua was speechless. He flew out of the illusory formation and straightened his shoulders a couple of times. He wanted to show off his arrogance to the others. Of course, it was the first time Xiao Hua had forced a late-stage cultivator to take the lead in escaping from an illusory formation at the Feather Immortal Assembly since ancient times. Unfortunately, in the entire square, every disciple in the illusion formation was fighting with all their might. The disciples who didn't have a buy were also using the time to conserve their energy. Who would pay attention to him? As for the next 2 rounds of competition, they were also boring. They were the disciples of the Profound Sky sect and the Tai Ching sect. Although their cultivation wasn't bad, the power of their magic tools wasn't enough. They were about the same as Xiao Hua's fire cronet. Xiao Hua only needed to use Zheng Chun to defend himself, and he was able to fight evenly with them. Moreover, Xiao Hua didn't dare to do anything to build his foundation. When the time was up, he activated his magic tablet and escaped from the illusion formation. What Xiao Hua didn't know was that as soon as he disappeared from the illusion formation, his 2 opponents let out a long sigh of relief. They looked relaxed. Yesterday, Xiao Hua and Fan Tong made a big ruckus. Perhaps the disciples of other groups didn't know about it, but many disciples of the Thunder Controlling School had heard about it. Xiao Hua, such a fierce person, was actually able to kill a disciple who was holding a fragment of a magic weapon. Moreover, he did it while the disciple was still able to activate his magic tablet to escape. Who would dare to lower their guard? The second day of competition passed peacefully, but in the next few days, the situation seemed to have gotten out of control. Not to mention that the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect and the Changbai sect gradually broke out in anger. Jin Qing and Liao Zhouquan's warnings were gradually forgotten. Not to mention that the disciples of the Profound Sky sect and the Tai Ching sect, as well as the disciples of the other sects who gradually joined them, were also fighting with the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect and the Changbai sect. None of them showed mercy. As time passed, 2 more disciples of the other groups succeeded in building their foundation. Not only the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect, but the disciples of the other sects also became anxious. It was as if time didn't wait for them. Every time they fought, they would disregard life and death. Even with Xiao Hua's methods, he was still in a very difficult situation. That night, an illusion formation flashed. Xiao Hua's hair was a bit messy as he rushed out of the illusion formation. He cursed as he flew. Damn it, this young master can't build his foundation. Why would I fight with you? I already said it clearly. Why are you still so stubborn? Xiao Hua, you must not leave. While he was cursing, a plain-clothed female cultivator rushed out of the illusion formation with anger on her face. She was holding a sharp sword in her hand. Fan shower, fellow Taoist fan, Xiao Hua muttered as he landed on the ground. You've already escaped from the illusory formation. Of course, you've won this round. Even though this is your Tai Ching sect, you don't have to go too far, do you? Your cultivation is clearly profound. Why don't you? Fan Shower saw that things were going south and could only put away her sword. Her face was full of unwillingness. What? You're only happy if I kill you? Xiao Hua asked with a cold face. Why would I hate to die when I hear it in the morning? Foundation building sigh. Fan Shower glanced at Xiao Hua, then turned and left. Chapter 16:26. It's good that you can understand I's painstaking efforts. Jen Qing nodded. There are many times when a person is not a free person. There are many concerns that restrict your actions. You have to compromise and give in. Xiao Huan nodded silently. He thought of Xiao Xianrui and 100 Herbs sect for no reason. Of course, little friend Xiao, Changbai sect will also give some compensation. This compensation will make you very satisfied. De Ming said with a smile. Yes, the spirit stones and elixirs in the storage bag. Little friend Xiao can take 10%. Consider it as a token of our Changbai sect's sincerity. Liao Zhouquan continued. Haha. Thank you, Senior Liao. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said with a smile, however, the elixirs in the storage bag are all for Foundation establishment cultivators. There are even some elixirs for Golden Core cultivators, right? These are too far away for me. Then what does little friend Xiao mean? Liao Zhouquan was not surprised at all when he saw Xiao Hua talking about conditions. As long as he could talk about conditions, then everything was negotiable. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, other than the 10% of spirit stones and elixirs, can your sect compensate me with a secret manual for refining weapons? Liao Zhouquan's expression changed slightly, and he shook his head. Little friend Xiao is asking for too much. My Changbai sect is good at refining weapons, and there are many methods of refining weapons in the sect. However, those are all secrets of the Changbai sect. How can we give them to little friend Xiao? Of course, if little friend Xiao joins my Changbai sect, these methods will not be a problem. Asking for a sky-high price and asking for a low price, Liao Zhouquan was naturally bargaining with Xiao Hua. Even if he was willing to let Xiao Hua join the Changbai sect, would Xiao Hua dare? He would not dare even if you gave him 10 more guts. Therefore, Xiao Hua's face was full of regret, and he said with a smile, if Senior Liao said this 10 years ago, I would not hesitate at all and join the Changbai sect immediately. However, I am now a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. How would I dare to betray the sect? Senior Liao should think more about how to compensate me? Liao Zhouquan shrugged his shoulders with a helpless look on his face. Then I'm very sorry that I don't have any refining methods or cultivation methods. Let's see if there's anything else I can help you with. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment. There really wasn't much to ask for. The Imperial Thunder sect naturally had foundation, establishment cultivation techniques, and medicinal pills. Spirit stones and other medicinal pills were abundant in this storage pouch. Although the exquisite leaf scripture was incomplete, Liao Zhouquan definitely didn't have it. The same went for the dragon transformation art. What should I ask for? Xiao Hua was somewhat distressed. Should I ask for something from Aster? Ling Yicao? However, when he thought about it, he had never looked at the jade strip. He didn't even know what Ling Yicao looked like. What if he had it in his space? Senior, please wait a moment. Xiao Hua spoke in a low voice, and then he withdrew the jade slip that was given to him helplessly before he left before immersing his divine sense into it to take a look, and then a trace of a grin appeared on the corners of his mouth as he said to himself, so this is Ling Yicao. When Xiao Hua first visited the 100 Herbs Gate, he obtained from Jiangfeng a batch of dried seeds that couldn't germinate. Among them, 70% were dead, and only 30% were alive. Among them were a few stalks of Ling Yicao. Xiao Hua could use the Changbai sect as an excuse to give Ling Yicao to his master. Under everyone's somewhat strange gazes, Xiao Hua put away the jade slip and said with a smile, Junior doesn't have any plans. Just as he said this, Xiao Hua suddenly had a flash of inspiration. His eyes lit up as he remembered something. He said, Junior doesn't have any plans. However, since Senior Liao is so kind, then Junior saw your sect's senior brother Fan use an incomplete magic treasure in the illusion. If possible, can you give that to Junior? This, Liao Zhouquan was still somewhat hesitant. He said hesitantly, that magic treasure is actually Fan Tong's private property. Fellow Taoist Liao. Jin Qing was displeased when she heard this and said coldly, Xiao Hua received your spirit stones and medicinal pills, and you said that they were your Changbai sect property, so Xiao Hua had no choice but to return them to Changbai sect. Xiao Hua then asked for your incomplete magic treasure, and you said that it was Fan Tong's private property, so you couldn't give it to him. Then why don't you tell me in front of Senior Deming? What can you give and what can't you give? Fellow Taoist Jin, don't be hasty. Liao Zhouquan waved his hand, and 3 magic treasures flew out from his storage bag. They were a box, a short rope, and a shiny ball. He said with a smile, I have already prepared them. These 3 magic treasures are all suitable for little friend Xiao Hua. Little friend Xiao Hua can choose any one of them. Xiao Hua's eyes didn't blink, and his divine sense swept over them. He smiled and said, Senior Liao, speaking of magic treasures, the Imperial Thunder Sect also has many. Junior is only at the beginning of the 12th level of Qi refining. How many can I use? The magic treasures we have are enough. Junior has thought it through. I only want that magic treasure, and I don't want anything else. Beside him, Deming also smiled and said, Fellow Taoist Liao, since you want to gain something, you can only pay the price. In Ai's opinion, without waiting for Deming to finish, Liao Zhouquan smiled bitterly and said, Fine, fine, fine. Since Senior Deming said so, how can I refuse? He put away the 3 magic treasures, and with a wave of his hand, the small bronze seal flew into the air. However, Xiao Hua didn't take it, and he still looked at Liao Zhouquan with a smile. Little friend Xiao? Liao Zhouquan was puzzled. This is Ai's biggest concession. Little friend, Xiao doesn't have any other requests, right? What request could Junior have? Xiao Hua shook his head. It's just that this magic treasure doesn't have a method to refine it. Why would Junior want it? To make a paperweight for writing? When Liao Zhouquan heard this, he laughed involuntarily. Little friend Xiao, this is a damaged magic treasure. How could there be a method to refine it? Then forget it. Xiao Hua looked away from the seal, shook his head, and said, Junior had better take back the storage bag. Everything we talked about just now was in vain. Alas! Liao Zhouquan also sighed. Just as he was about to speak, Deming saw that the situation was not good and quickly advised, Fellow Taoist Liao, since you've already given away the damaged magic treasure, you don't have to care about the method to refine it. If there's no harm in giving it away. Xiao Hua looked at Liao Zhouquan very calmly. Since Fan Tong could use this Sanskrit, he must have a method to refine it in his storage bag. Sure enough, Liao Zhouquan stared at Xiao Hua for a moment, and the corner of his mouth rose. He smiled and said, Alas, little friend Xiao is really... Without waiting for him to finish, he patted his hand and took out a very old-looking jade slip from his storage bag. With a wave of his hand, the jade slip flew in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua smiled and picked up the jade slip. After looking at it, he respectfully handed it to Jin Qing and said, Grandmaster, please take a look at it for me. Jin Qing slightly nodded. She reached out and used her divine sense to look inside. After a moment, her expression slightly changed and she frowned. Fellow Taoist Liao, this method to refine it is not bad. But why is the method to use it so damaged? There are even some places that are recently damaged? Good to let fellow Taoist Jin know. If this cloud suppression seal wasn't damaged and the method to use it was complete, how come my Changbai sect disciples die? As for the recent damage, it was probably damaged in the illusion formation. Liao Zhouquan said with a smile. Fine. Xiao Hua sighed in his heart. 90% of the spirit stones and pills in the storage bag had to be returned to the Changbai sect. This was inevitable. To be able to get one more damaged magic treasure, it was worth it. And looking at Liao Zhouquan's expression, it seemed like he already knew that he would have such a request. He probably couldn't win against him. Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and put away the suppressing cloud seal. He then took out a storage pouch from his bosom and took 90% of the spirit stones and medicinal pills from Fan Tong's storage pouch. He put them all into his own storage pouch and handed it to Liao Zhouquan with a smile. Senior Liao, please take a look. Fan Tong's storage bag was much bigger than his storage bag. It was a high-quality item. How could Xiao Hua return it to the Changbai sect? Liao Zhouquan took the storage bag and carefully scanned it with his divine sense. He said in shock, Xiao, little friend Xiao, Why did you take 10% of all the pills? What are you going to do with the golden core pills? Xiao Hua was even more surprised when he heard this. What? Didn't we agree on 10%? What's wrong with Junior doing this? And that's it. Liao Zhouquan kept the storage bag and stood up. Many thanks, Senior Deming. Many thanks, fellow Daoist Jin. He then looked at Xiao Hua. I also have to thank little friend Xiao. Everyone stood up, and Xiao Hua bowed. I don't dare, I don't dare. After sending off Deming and Liao Zhouquan, Xiao Hua turned around and handed over a golden core pill to Jin Qing. He smiled and said, I don't know what this pill is, but looking at Senior Liao's pained expression, it seems to be a golden core pill. Please accept it, martial ancestor Jin. Jin Qing looked at it and waved his hand. He smiled and said, This soul-solidifying pill is a pill used by the Changbai sect to solidify the soul. I won't be polite with you. Martial ancestor Jin, do you have any other pills that are useful? Disciple's master is only a foundation establishment cultivator. He has no use for golden core pills. Xiao Hua took Fan Tong's storage bag and asked, there is no need. Jin Qing laughed and said, These golden core pills can be considered as free. In fact, when Liao Zhouquan said 10% of the pills, it was 10% of the total value of all the pills. He probably wanted you to take more of the building foundation pills, gathering essence pills, and other pills. But before he could say anything, you took all the pills. You made him speechless. As he spoke, he gave the old jade scroll to Xiao Hua and said, Keep this jade scroll well. Even though the cloud-suppressing seal is a low-level magic treasure, it requires a lot of magic power. You're just a chi-refining realm early-stage disciple. You can't provide it. Wait until you reach the late stage. Yes, disciple understands. Xiao Hua took it respectfully. He felt that his magic power was comparable to a chi-refining realm late-stage cultivator. Since Fan Tong could use it, there was no reason why he couldn't. Rest early. Jin Qing turned and left. There are 4 more rounds tomorrow. I don't know if the Changbai sect disciples can restrain themselves. Besides, this feather immortal gathering. Oh, right. The 2 sword cultivators from Huan country want to exchange something with the cultivators from the 3 cultivation countries. They didn't say what it was. You got so many pills for free, you could go take a look. Jin Qing turned around and said after walking halfway. Yes, disciple understands. Xiao Hua bowed and thanked him. After Jin Qing left, Xiao Hua activated the restriction in the quiet room and sat down cross-legged. He took out the white bone, the cloud-suppressing seal, and the jade scroll. After staring at it for a moment, he put away the cloud-suppressing seal and picked up the white bone. Using the mana in his hand, a wisp of samadhi true fire that was much thicker than before was born from his palm and burned on the white bone. Sure enough, with the addition of the samadhi true fire, the white bone emitted a faint green brilliance in the pure purple flames of the samadhi true fire. Not long after, crooked green seal characters that were somewhat similar to tadpoles emerged from the green light. Chapter 16:27. Alas, no matter what, I can't make another foundation establishment cultivator. Although Xiao Hua looked at Fan Xiao's back and felt very lonely, he kept warning himself that if he did it again and again, it would definitely attract the attention of others. In fact, Xiao Hua himself also understood that on the first day of the Feather Immortal Assembly, there were 2 aura-refining disciples competing with him to build their foundation. Moreover, the illusory formation had the function of recording images. Presumably, the disciples of the Taiching sect would take the time to watch it. Regarding this, Xiao Hua had already thought of an explanation. He was strong, and his magic power was stronger than those late-stage 12th-layer aura-refining disciples. That was all. Xiao Hua's true Samadhi Fire and Devil Hammer also didn't leave behind any images, which made Xiao Hua feel slightly relieved. Junior martial brother Xiao, why were you chased out? Could it be that you took advantage of her inside? A giggling voice sounded. Xiao Hua didn't need to turn around to know that it was Qian Diheng. What? Senior martial brother Qian. Have you ever been chased out like this? Xiao Hua had seen Qian Diheng a lot these past few days. He also felt that this guy was smiling mischievously and was easy to get close to. At least, he wasn't as disgusting as Thunder Palace's Thunder Mountain Range's Zhenqi Kuei. Therefore, he talked to Qian Diheng more often. Cough, cough. I actually wanted to, but the people I met were all ruthless and cruel. Qian Diheng's words were somewhat weak. When Xiao Hua turned around to look, he saw that Qian Diheng's face was pale and his expression was extremely dispirited. At first glance, it was obvious that he had used too much of his magic power to control that protective magic treasure of his. Senior Martial Brother Qian, if you can't do it, you'd better give up. Xiao Hua kindly advised. TCHU, an early-stage 12th layer aura refining disciple of the Thunder Palace, didn't give up. How can I give up? If word got out, would you still let I mingle in the Thunder-controlling sect? Qian Diheng rolled his eyes at Xiao Hua and said, unhappily, Fine, I didn't say anything. Xiao Hua waved his hand. Just as he was about to leave, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly started to condense in the air about 1 zhang to his left. In the blink of an eye, soybean-sized crystals gradually appeared. Someone wants to build their foundation. Xiao Hua, who had seen Li Zongbao build his foundation, immediately realized. Qian Diheng also had a happy expression. He shouted, It seems to be our group. I wonder who it is. While they were talking, a few divine senses swept over. They were Changbai sect's Liao Zhouquan, Imperial Thunder sect's Jin Qing, Black Heaven sect's Jing Hao, Celestial Music sect's Tian Wei, and the other representatives. After identifying the illusion array, Black Heaven sect's Jing Hao and Imperial Thunder sect's Jin Qing flew to the front of the illusion array. The disciples fighting inside the illusion array were the disciples of Black Heaven sect and Imperial Thunder sect. The ball in the illusory array gradually emitted a faint green light. Then, with a flash of light, a disciple came out from the illusory array. The condensed heaven and earth spiritual qi in the surroundings swarmed towards that disciple. When Jin Qing saw it clearly, joy appeared on her face. It was Qian Heng from the Heavenly Thunder Palace who had reached the foundation building realm. Then, Jin Qing waved her hand and cast out a seal that temporarily separated the heaven and earth spiritual qi from Qian Heng's body. She smiled and said, Congratulations, Qian Heng. Are you going to build your foundation now? Or should I use the spirit accumulation talisman? Qian Heng probably already had a plan in mind. He smiled and said, Thank you for your trouble, Grandmaster Jin. I would like to use the divine accumulation talisman. Good, Jin Qing praised. She waved her hand, and a shiny talisman flew out from her hand. It should have been prepared beforehand. The talisman landed on Qian Heng's head and sank into his body. A clear light flashed on his body and disappeared. As the clear light disappeared, the condensed heaven and earth spiritual qi in the surroundings also disappeared. The extremely dense heaven and earth spiritual qi also returned to normal. Thank you, Martial Ancestor Jen. Qian Heng bowed and thanked her. No need. You can call me Martial Uncle from now on. Jin Qing was in a good mood. She waved her hand and said, You should go back to the quiet room to comprehend and stabilize your foundation. If you can't control it, it's better for you to build your foundation as soon as possible. Disciple understands. Thank you, Martial Uncle Jen. Qian Heng cupped his hands and returned to the quiet room. Good, my Imperial Thunder sect finally has a disciple who has reached the foundation building realm. Jin Qing looked around and said with a smile, You all have to work hard too. Yes, disciple understands. Everyone bowed and answered. After Jin Qing left, Qian Diheng waved his hand and said, Let's go, Junior Brother Xiao. Today is another day. I need to go back to the quiet room to take some pills and recover my magic power. What about you? Then he looked at Xiao Hua and shook his head. You don't seem to have used much magic power? I ran away as soon as I saw you. Of course, I can't compare to you when you use your magic weapon. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Let's go. There are only a few days left. After the group battles, those who can't enter the top 32 can relax. That's right. There are 13 sects participating in the Feather Immortal Assembly in the Cultivation 3 Kingdoms. On average, each sect can only send 3 disciples. I'm afraid I won't make it. Qian Diheng looked at Xiao Hua again and said, Junior brother, Xiao hid his strength well. You can even kill Fan Tong of the Changbai sect. I think you can enter the second round of the competition, right? Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, I was just lucky. In the next few battles, I relied on my flying talisman to escape. It's impossible for me to enter the top 32. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Qian Diheng didn't ask anymore. The two of them walked towards the pavilion of the Imperial Thunder sect. When they arrived at the pavilion, Qian Diheng walked in quickly. He wanted to go back and take the elixir earlier. However, Xiao Hua seemed to remember something and shouted, Oh, Senior brother Qian, do you know about the mysterious Een Spirit Grass? Mysterious Een Spirit Grass? Of course I know about it. Qian Diheng was surprised. He stopped and said carelessly, Why are you asking about it? Nothing. I just want to know what it looks like. Xiao Hua smiled and said, So it's like that. Qian Diheng patted his storage bag and took out a jade slip. He handed it over and said, This jade slip contains the records of the Imperial Thunder sect. Take a look. Well, you don't have to return it to me. I'll ask Senior Brother to make a copy for me. Hee. Thank you, Senior Brother Qian. Xiao Hua took the jade slip. Qian Diheng left in a hurry. Immersing his divine sense into the jade slip, Xiao Hua was overjoyed. There were many records of the mysterious Een Spirit Grass in this jade slip. There were diagrams and introductions. It was exactly what Xiao Hua needed. Oh, this is the mysterious Een Spirit Grass? Xiao Hua quickly found the records of the mysterious Een Spirit Grass. I's character is good. I exchanged it for a bunch of mysterious Een Spirit Grass seeds in Jingbua City. The little cultivators of the Grass Spirit sect are also very generous. This mysterious Een Spirit Grass is among them. Xiao Hua saw it clearly and couldn't help but laugh inwardly. But why are these two sword cultivators looking for this mysterious Een Spirit Grass? This thing seems to be the main ingredient for refining the mysterious Een Spirit Pill. The mysterious Een Spirit Pill is used by Aura's core stage cultivators to strengthen their primordial spirit. These two little sword cultivators are only at the early stage of foundation establishment. Why do they need this thing? Xiao Hua hesitated slightly and thought, if I can use this mysterious Een Spirit Grass to exchange for a sword pill cultivation method or a flying sword technique, that would be great. Thinking, Xiao Hua picked a stalk of mysterious Een Spirit Grass and put it in a jade box. He put it in his storage bag and walked out of the pavilion. Then, he asked the patrolling Tai Ching sect disciple where the two sword cultivators lived. Only then did he look for them. Before he arrived, he saw that there were already a few disciples in front of the pavilion. Xiao Hua scratched his chin and walked behind the last disciple. He cupped his hands and said in a low voice, Senior brother, are you in? I'm looking for the sword cultivators of Huan country to exchange for something. That disciple didn't wait for Xiao Hua to finish and answered. Thank you, Senior brother. Xiao Hua thanked and stood behind this disciple. After a while, he still didn't see any disciples coming out of the pavilion. He heard the disciple in front become impatient. He turned his head and asked, I am Kunlun's sect's Kuxingxi. Which sect is fellow Taoist from? I am from Imperial Thunder sect. Oh, Shi country's Imperial Thunder sect. Kuxingxi glanced at Xiao Hua and said with a smile, What do you want to exchange for something with the sword cultivators? I don't have anything good. I just came to see what the sword cultivators have, or what they want. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Kuxingxi glanced at Xiao Hua and said in a low voice, If fellow Taoist Xiao is like this, then it's better to turn back as soon as possible. Why does fellow Taoist Ku say that? Xiao Hua was surprised. Fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't know. Kuxingxi said mysteriously, This is already the third day I came here. Why? What you don't know is that those two sword cultivators only wanted this penniless priest to show them the items. They didn't even say what they wanted, nor did they say what they wanted in exchange. Tell me, How could this penniless priest casually give him the items? Therefore, there are many people like Junior Brother Xiao who come and test things every day, and all of them come out with their tails between their legs. If fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't have anything rare, then it's better to turn back and not waste time. So it's like that. Xiao Hua came to a realization. He raised his hand and pointed, saying, "Fellow Taoist, look, someone came out." A cultivator who wasn't tall and had an ordinary appearance walked out of the pavilion with his head drooped. "Second brother, how is it?" Ku Xingxi waved his hand and called out. That cultivator heard Ku Xingxi's call and walked over. He looked at Xiao Hua and said in a low voice, "It's hopeless, big brother. I tried several times, but couldn't get anything out of them. I took out a bunch of things, but they didn't even look at them. You still want to go in and try?" "In. I'll go in and take a look. After all, Huan country has a lot of things that our 3 cultivation countries don't have. What if I have something they need?" Ku Xingxi nodded and said, "Go back and rest early. There's still a competition tomorrow." After that cultivator left, Ku Xingxi said with a smile, "That's I's younger brother, Ku Qiaoyong. He, fellow Taoist Ku, is really amazing. Even your younger brother is in the late stage of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. I really admire you." Xiao Hua said with great admiration, somewhat aghast. "It's nothing." Although Ku Xingxi's expression was somewhat proud, he still waved his hand and said, "Those 2 sword cultivators are really amazing. They're both in the early stage of the foundation building realm." After the time it took to eat a meal, it was finally Xiao Hua's turn. Seeing Ku Xingxi's expressionless face, Xiao Hua knew this guy didn't have profound ingress. Chapter 1628. Fellow Taoist, you can go in. The Taiching sect disciple guarding the pavilion saw Ku Xingxi come out and said to Xiao Hua with a smile. The smile on his face was extremely dull, as if he had said this sentence countless times. "Many thanks, fellow Taoist." Xiao Hua cupped his hands and entered the pavilion. This pavilion was similar to the Imperial Thunder sects, but it had fewer quiet rooms. There was a rather large carved wooden door in front of it. Xiao Hua could see that Ku Xingxi came out from that wooden door. Pushing open the wooden door, Xiao Hua saw a large hall inside. Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuhe were bored to death sitting there. Zhang Yuhe even puffed up her cheeks and used her cherry lips to blow something in the air. Xiao Hua glanced around and saw a small purple sword flying back and forth in the air, just like a swimming fish. Cough, cough. Seeing someone come in, Zhang Yutong coughed. Zhang Yuhe glanced at Xiao Hua unhappily and sucked the small purple sword in her mouth like a swallow returning to its nest. When Zhang Yuhe saw Xiao Hua, her eyes lit up. She pointed to Xiao Hua and said, "Huh? Aren't you that?" "Sister," Zhang Yutong rebuked in a low voice, then cupped her hands and said, "Fellow Taoist seems to have met before." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Presumably, these 2 sisters had seen too many cultivators in the past few days and had long forgotten his name. He cupped his hands and said, "I, Xiao Hua, greet the 2 fellow Taoists again." "Yes, yes, Xiao Hua." Zhang Yuhe didn't seem to hide her forgetfulness. She slapped her forehead and said, "Your name is too vulgar. I really can't remember it." Zhang Yutong looked at her twin sister as if she had been defeated. She waved her hand and activated the magic tablet on the table, activating the restriction in the hall. Then she put her index and middle finger together and pointed at the wooden door. A green brilliance hit the wooden door, and a circle of green brilliance rippled from the wooden door, instantly wrapping the entire hall from top to bottom. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please sit." Zhang Yutong pointed at the chair beside her and said with a smile, "I wonder what good things fellow Taoist Xiao has brought to exchange with us sisters." Zhang Yuhe rolled her eyes at Zhang Yutong, and then a sly smile appeared on her face, like a little fox that saw its prey. She turned to look at Xiao Hua. "Could it be the thing I told you before?" Xiao Hua sat down on the chair and said confidently, "I came precisely with this item. May I know what fellow Taoists have to exchange for?" "What? Is there really one?" Zhang Yuhe and Zhang Yutong looked at each other with a look of disbelief. They stood up almost at the same time and asked, "Do you really have a 6,000-year-old profound spirit grass?" Fellow Taoists, don't make such a fuss over nothing. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "I do have the profound spirit grass, but I can't be sure of its age. I still need you two fellow Taoists to appraise it yourselves. Of course, as long as fellow Taoist Xiao has it, I will naturally know its age." Zhang Yuhe said anxiously. "Then the spirit grass," Xiao Hua said unhurriedly. "The spirit grass is naturally an eye's storage pouch." After saying that, he patted his storage pouch, but didn't take out the jade box. Zhang Yuhe shouted, "Take it out and let I see it." "Fellow Taoists, please sit down first. We will talk slowly." Xiao Hua waved his hand and said with a smile. Zhang Yutong frowned slightly and pulled Zhang Yuhe to sit down. She said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, are you waiting for a good price?" "Fellow Taoist, you can say that." Xiao Hua nodded slightly, looked around and said, "May I know what fellow Taoist is going to exchange for the spirit grass?" "What do you want?" Zhang Yutong thought for a moment and asked calmly. "Do you have anything I want?" "This." Zhang Yutong hesitated, and Zhang Yuhe said impatiently, "We have spirit stones, best quality pills, and a magic weapon." "Sister." Zhang Yutong stopped Zhang Yuhe again and repeatedly signaled her not to say more. "Also, I have a 700-year-old mother-son spirit fruit in my storage pouch. It will be extremely helpful for you to break through." Zhang Yuhe looked at Zhang Yutong and still said it. "AI," Zhang Yutong sighed, looked at Xiao Hua and said, "Sister has told you everything we have. Which one do you want?" Xiao Hua smiled and shook his head. "What? You don't want anything? Don't you want to know what the magic weapon is?" Zhang Yuhe jumped up and said, "That is a complete magic weapon. I don't have enough cultivation. I don't want any magic weapon." Xiao Hua said calmly, "I only want your Xian sword sex, sword nurturing, and sword driving technique." "Impossible," Zhang Yuhe and Zhang Yutong said at the same time. "Then forget it." Xiao Hua spread his hands, shrugged, stood up, and said, "Fellow Taoists, please remove the restriction. I will take my leave." Zhang Yuhe and Zhang Yutong waited for several days. Finally, someone came to give them spirit herbs. How could I let it go? Zhang Yuhe walked over and smiled. "Fellow Taoist Xiao is not a sword cultivator. What do you want my Xian sword sex sword driving technique for?" "Fellow Taoist doesn't need to worry about this. I just like to look, and I am prepared to read all the spells in the world," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "I'm afraid that fellow Taoist Xiao also got a sword pill." Zhang Yuhe stared at Xiao Hua's eyes and asked, "Maybe, maybe not. You can slowly guess." Xiao Hua didn't give in and answered. At this time, Zhang Yutong also walked over and said sincerely, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, sword cultivators like us are not the same as cultivators like you. It's not that we sisters want to make things difficult for you. If you take my Xian sword sex sword driving technique, you won't be able to cultivate it. You will also delay your cultivation for no reason. This is really unwise." Xiao Hua smiled. "This is I's hobby. Even if I just look at it, I will be happy." Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuhe were helpless. After discussing for a while, Zhang Yutong said, "Does fellow Taoist Xiao want my Xian sword sex sword driving technique? Or is it okay as long as it is a sword cultivator?" Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said, "Xian sword sex is the best. If it really doesn't work, other sword cultivators' techniques are also fine." Hearing this, Zhang Yuhe let out a sigh of relief. She clapped her hands and took out a sword-shaped jade slip. She said with a smile, "I have a sword driving technique here. It is something for my declining sword cultivator sect. I can exchange it with fellow Taoist Xiao. However, let me say this first. I have never seen this thing before." Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He reached out his hand to take it and said with a smile, "This thing is naturally something that I picked up on the side of the road. It has nothing to do with your sisters." However, where Xiao Hua's hand reached, there was nothing. Zhang Yuhe said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Xiao is not kind. Why didn't you take out the spiritual grass?" Xiao Hua's face turned red. He clapped his hands and took out the jade box containing the spiritual grass. He handed it over and said with a smile, "I was too happy and forgot. Fellow Taoists, please appraise it." "Okay." Zhang Yutong was also overjoyed. She reached out her hand to take a look. When she opened the jade box, she was first pleasantly surprised, but then her face was puzzled. Finally, she was actually a little angry. "What? Is it wrong?" Seeing that Zhang Yutong's expression was so rich, Xiaohua, who had been staring at her the whole time, felt his heart sink. Zhang Yuhe was also stunned. She snatched the jade box. When she saw the spiritual grass inside, her face also showed incomparable disappointment. She clapped her hands and put the sword-shaped jade slip into her storage bag. She said coldly to Xiaohua, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, could it be that you are making fun of my sisters?" Xiaohua was anxious and said, "The age of this spiritual grass, is it not enough?" Zhang Yuhe said helplessly, "The age is naturally enough. Unfortunately, this is not profound, spiritual grass." "How is that possible? Isn't this profound grass?" Xiaohua said anxiously. But after he said that, he realized that it was profound grass and not profound spiritual grass. Thinking, he felt that he should take out the jade slip. No, it recorded profound grass and not profound spiritual grass. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, what I want is profound spiritual grass, not this profound grass." Zhang Yutong saw that Xiaohua misunderstood and explained in a low voice, "Profound spiritual grass is a kind of profound grass that grows in the profound illusory realm. Although it is profound grass, it is different from ordinary profound grass. It absorbs a special kind of spiritual energy from the profound illusory realm. So it is called profound spiritual grass." "AI, so that's it. I am really ignorant." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He reached out to take back the profound grass. Who would have thought that he would reach out to nothing? "What?" Xiaohua was slightly surprised. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please wait a moment." Zhang Yuhe suddenly thought of something and said in a low voice. Immediately, Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuhe communicated with each other again. This time, the two discussed for a longer time. It seemed that there was still some disagreement, and their faces were actually red. But in the end, it was Zhang Yuhe who gained the upper hand. Zhang Yutong sat back in her chair and didn't speak anymore. "Fellow Taoist Xiao." Zhang Yuhe was somewhat proud of herself. She smiled and said, "I discussed with my sister. Although your profound grass is not profound spiritual grass, its medicinal age is sufficient. And, to tell you the truth, Tai Ching sect also promised to give I a profound grass. It's just that the profound grass is not as old as fellow Taoist Zhao's. So I decided to exchange the spiritual grass with you." Hearing this, Xiaohua was overjoyed. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Zhang. You don't need to thank me so early, because your profound spiritual grass is not profound spiritual grass. I'm afraid I can't give you the sword controlling technique." "What? Not the sword controlling technique?" Hearing this, Xiaohua immediately shook his head like a rattle drum. He repeatedly said, "Other than the sword controlling technique, I don't want anything else. I's magic treasure. Don't you want to see it?" Zhang Yuhe said enticingly. Then, she patted her storage bag and took out a golden hairpin. "No." Without even looking, he waved his hand and said, "This thing is of little value to I. I can't eat it nor use it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it." Zhang Yuhe didn't expect that even a magic treasure would not be able to move Xiaohua. She angrily said, "I persuaded my sister with great difficulty, and you're not going to give me any face? Today, you're exchanging whether you want to or not. The profound grass is in I's hands. I'd like to see how you're going to take it away." As she spoke, she opened her small mouth, and the small purple sword flew out once more. Chapter 16:29. Isn't this robbery? Xiaohua was dumbfounded. However, there was nothing he could do. Could it be that he had to report to the Tai Ching sect and say that his 1,000-year-old profound grass was forcibly exchanged for a magic weapon by two sword cultivators? Not to mention that the Taiching sect already had the mystic grass and wanted to exchange it with Zhang Yuha. Would it be a problem for him to interfere? Just the origin of the mystic grass was something that he would not be able to explain to Jin Xing and the others. Truly a female bandit for no reason. Xiao Hua thought angrily, but his gaze landed on the flying sword cruising in the air. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua said with a bitter face, "How about this, fellow Daoist Zhang? I don't want your sword-controlling technique anymore. How about I just want the sword-nurturing technique?" Sword-nurturing technique? You really want to nurture a sword? Zhang Yuha said, "Without the sword-controlling technique, what's the use of nurturing a sword? You don't need to worry about that." Xiao Hua still said the same thing. However, it's really too light just to nurture the sword. It can't compare to my several thousand-year-old mysterious grass. If fellow Daoist Zhang has a way to repair the sword pill, I can actually consider it. Sword pill repair method, plus the sword nurturing technique? This time, it was Zhang Yuha's turn to shake her head. No, the price is too high. Unless you take out two profound grasses. Really? Xiao Hua was overjoyed. What? You have two? Zhang Yuha's face was only slightly stunned, but there was no joy. After Xiao Hua finished speaking, he felt regret. How could he have 1,000-year-old profound grass just because he said so? Seeing Zhang Yuha's reaction, he said, "I want to, but I don't. I don't even want to." Zhang Yuha rolled her eyes at him. Zhang Yutong, who had been silent all this time, said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, did you get a damaged sword pill? You want to repair it and use it?" Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Daoist Zhang is right. Then, can fellow Daoist Xiao take it out and let I see it?" Zhang Yutong stared into Xiao Hua's eyes and said, "If possible, I have a compromise." This, Xiao Hua pondered for a moment. Then, with a wave of his hand, he took out the smallest sword pellet and handed it over. He said, "I obtained this by chance when I was training. I originally wanted to throw it away, but it seemed to be fun, so I kept it." How could Zhang Yutong believe Xiao Hua's words? She took the sword pellet and carefully examined it. She spat out a mouthful of true essence onto the sword pellet, but the sword pellet didn't react at all. Soon after, he expressionlessly handed it over to Zhang Yuha, who had long been itching to give it a try. Zhang Yuha looked at it even more carefully before casually tossing it to Xiao Hua and saying with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, you really picked this up? What a piece of trash." Xiao Hua's heart went cold. He cupped his hands and said, "I'll listen to fellow Daoist's explanation. I won't hide it from fellow Daoist Xiao. The quality of your sword pill is indeed not bad. Even us sisters can't tell its origin. Unfortunately, the so-called sword pellet has the essence of the sword. Your sword pellet is completely dead, so it's impossible for it to give birth to sword essence. Naturally, it can't control the sword," Zhang Yuha said without any trace of politeness. "Even if you take the sword nurturing technique and the repair technique, it's impossible for you to come back from the dead. AI, so it's like this." Xiao Hua sighed, waved his hand, and put away the sword pellet. But at this time, Zhang Yutong spoke again. "However, after seeing fellow Daoist Zhao's sword pellet, I dare to rashly discuss with fellow Daoist Xiao." "What do you mean?" Xiao Hua was surprised. Zhang Yutong clapped her hands, took out a jade slip in the shape of half a sword, and said with a smile, "I also obtained a sword-controlling technique in my early years. Most of it has been damaged, leaving only the sword-nurturing technique. This sword-nurturing technique is somewhat unconventional and is different from the usual techniques of my Shinsword sect. However, from what I know, this sword-nurturing technique has a unique effect on repairing sword pellets. If fellow Daoist Xiao is willing, I will reluctantly part with this treasure." Zhang Yuha was stunned and said while patting her forehead, "Sister, I forgot about this thing. How many years has it been?" Then she said to Xiao Hua, "Sister, this thing can indeed meet fellow Daoist Xiao's requirements, but this sword-nurturing technique has very high requirements. Fellow Daoist Xiao, please think about it." "AI, forget it. There's nothing to think about." I have no use for this mysterious ingrass, and the two fellow Taoists also have no use for this jade slip. If we exchange it with each other, it may have some value, Xiao Hua said weakly. Okay. Zhang Yutong waved her hand, and the half-broken jade slip flew into Xiao Hua's hand. Xiao Hua didn't even look at it, and put it in his storage bag. Zhang Yuha couldn't bear it, and said in a low voice, "That fellow Taoist Xiao, if you find the mysterious grass in the future, you can also come to my Xian sword sect. I beg Master C if he can give you a sword-controlling technique." "Aha! Thank you, fellow Taoist Zhang." Xiao Hua turned around and said, "Ming country's mysterious illusion is one of the 10 most dangerous places. I don't know when I can enter it. At that time, if I cultivate a sword pill, it will be too late, right?" Fellow Taoist Xiao is right. Sword nurturing starts from the first grade, which is the first level of qi refining. Fellow Taoist Xiao, it's already too late to nurture a sword. Zhang Yuha said regretfully. "It's okay." Zhang Yutong said with a smile, "According to the method in the broken sword, you have to nurture a sword at the 9th grade at the latest, which is equivalent to the 12th level of qi refining." "Really?" Xiao Hua was overjoyed. But then, Zhang Yutong said with a smile, "It's just a possibility. The later it is, the less likely it is to successfully nurture a sword. In other words, it's impossible to repair it." "Haha, there's always some hope." "Thank you, fellow Taoists," Xiao Hua said with a bow. "In addition, I hope you two fellow Taoists can find a mysterious ingrass. I will take my leave." Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuha opened the restriction and let Xiao Hua go out. Seeing Xiao Hua's depressed face, the other cultivator who came in later was secretly delighted like Xiao Hua. When he just went in, Xiao Hua walked back to the Imperial Thunder Sect's pavilion with mixed feelings. As soon as he entered the door, he ran into Min Ge. Min Ge's expression was already very good, and his steps were vigorous. Seeing Xiao Hua coming in from outside, his eyes slightly narrowed, and his face piled up with an indescribable smile. "Junior brother Xiao, where did you go?" Xiao Hua originally didn't want to pay attention to him, but since the other person spoke, he could not answer. After all, they were from the same sect. "Just walking around, nothing important," Xiao Hua said casually. "Ha, it seems junior brother Xiao had a peaceful day, eh?" These words were normal, but the word peaceful provoked Xiao Hua's anger for no reason. Just now, he didn't get the sword-controlling technique, so he snorted coldly. "I did mess around, but compared to some people who can no longer participate in the competition, I'm considered lucky." "You're talking about I?" Min Ge's expression immediately changed. "There are many disciples in the entire Bright Realm who can't participate. I'll talk about whoever I want, and I'll talk about whoever doesn't have the face to come up." Xiao Hua didn't pay attention to him at all and walked towards his quiet room. "Xiao Hua, you're good. What's so great about loose cultivators?" Mingu stomped his feet. "Junior brother Min, what are you doing?" Wang Yunxiao's angry voice came from the door. "This is the Tai Ching sect. Why are you being mocked for no reason?" Humph, Xiao Hua sneered and activated the magic tablet. He entered the quiet room, and with a flash of brilliance, the quiet room was sealed, and the sound outside was completely silent. He really hated this guy now. Wasn't it just that his cultivation was more profound than his? Wasn't it just that he was still comfortably participating in the Feather Immortal Assembly, and he was already eliminated? How could you possibly know about yours truly's abilities? Xiao Hua sneered and took out the damaged sword-shaped jade slip. He immersed his divine sense in it and carefully read it. "Senior brother Wang, this guy is getting more and more rampant. He actually dares to scold me." At this time, Mingu couldn't help but say to Wang Yunxiao in the quiet room, "Why doesn't this guy die in the illusory array? He's wandering in front of I every day." Ha. Guess where Xiao Hua went just now?" Wang Yunxiao said mysteriously. "Where did he go? Could it be that he went to the Utopia faction again?" Mingu asked. Yuan Bo looked at Wang Yunxiao and frowned. "This guy's whereabouts are very mysterious. I'm afraid he went to a place that we don't know about, right?" "Yes, exactly. I saw him go to the Sword Cultivator's Pavilion just now." "Sword Cultivator? What did he go there for?" Mingu was stunned, but Yuan Bo thought for a moment and said with a smile, "Of course he went to exchange something with the sword cultivator. He was originally a loose cultivator, and I don't know how many lives he's taken. Naturally, there's some good things in his storage bag. I think he went to the sword cultivator to exchange for a magic weapon to use. Sigh, I don't know what the sword cultivator wants, and I don't know if that magic weapon is real or not." Mingu sighed. Wang Yinxiao said mysteriously, "I don't know if he succeeded in exchanging, but he went in for a long time, and when he came out, he was very arrogant. I think he must have gained something. Could it be he really exchanged for that magic weapon?" Yuan Bo said involuntarily, "How many good things did he have in his storage bag?" "Yes, he is." Mingu also came to a realization, but then he covered his mouth and said, "Ancestor Jin didn't let us say more. There must be something fishy about it." Wang Yinxiao, Yuan Bo, and Mingu all had a kind of understanding on their faces. They looked at each other and secretly calculated in their hearts in the quiet room. Xiaohua silently withdrew his divine sense from the jade scroll. His face was calm, but it was only calm for a moment. Xiaohua hit the ground with his palm, and a burst of shame and anger appeared on his face. "Damn it, I suffered a big loss this time. The method of nurturing this sword pill is not wrong, and it's also a unique way. It's just like Zhang Yutong said, it can repair the sword pill. But where did I get sword energy? Without sword energy, I can only place this sword pill in my dantian to nurture it. Although there is a secret method to nurture a sword pill with true qi, it's still inferior. The flying sword cultivated is neither fish nor fowl, so it's better to directly use the flying sword technique. Moreover, I've already cultivated the dragon transformation art. My meridians are whole, and so is my dantian. I can't place a flying sword that I don't know if it can be cultivated in my dantian to nurture and destroy my daily cultivation of the dragon transformation art." Sigh. Xiaohua sighed, feeling a wave of pain in his heart. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 1630. As for Xiaohua, he had lost several thousand years of profound ingrass in exchange for an unusable jade slip, causing him to feel indignant. He closed his eyes and meditated for a moment before taking out the jade slip and carefully reading it again. When he had almost finished reading the jade slip, his eyes lit up. "Oh, it can actually be nourished with divine sense? What kind of spiritual sword can this nurture? It's just that the possibility of nurturing a spiritual sword is too small." Xiaohua frowned again. "Forget it. It's getting late and the sky is bright. Why do I have to participate in the competition today? Alas, why don't?" Although Xiaohua thought so, he still couldn't bear to give up. When Xiaohua came out of the quiet room, he ran into other disciples. There were still a dozen or so disciples from the Imperial Thunder sect who were qualified to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly. At this time, they all came out of their quiet rooms. Seeing Xiaohua come out, Sun Shu walked a few steps forward as if he wanted to say something, but Xiaohua was in a bad mood. He glanced at Sun Shu and didn't greet him. Sun Shu was a little embarrassed, but he still walked beside Xiaohua and said in a low voice, "Junior Martial Brother Xiao, a disciple from the Earth Thunder Palace, built his foundation yesterday. Did you know?" Xiaohua glanced at him, then looked ahead and said in a low voice, "What does other people building their foundation have to do with you?" Sun Shu bit his lip and thought for a moment, then said, "I was just envious. I don't know when I can build my foundation. Maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's the day after tomorrow." Xiaohua said indifferently, "If you think about building your foundation every day, how can you have a calm heart? Without calmness, how can you build your foundation?" Sun Shu was shocked when he heard this. It was like a basin of cold water had been poured over his head. He didn't care about other people's gazes and bowed respectfully. "Junior Martial Brother Xiao, please accept I's bow." Xiaohua quickly helped him up and said with a smile, "I'm just saying, I'm not building my foundation, so it's easy for me to say that. Don't think I know a lot." Sun Shu knew what Xiaohua said was reasonable, but Xiaohua reminded him after all, so he was still grateful. Before the two of them even walked out of the pavilion, they were already bowing and supporting each other. In the eyes of some people with ulterior motives, there was naturally a lot of resentment. The competition of the Feather Immortal Gathering was coming to an end. Those who could build their foundation had already found their opportunity. There were many disciples like Sun Shu who were at the late stage of the 12th level of Qi refining. They were so close to building their foundation, but they just couldn't find the knack for it. They were missing that sliver of opportunity. Just as a certain great cultivator had said, although cultivation was made up of 99% hard work and less than 5% chance, that less than 5% chance dictated your fate, and you wouldn't be able to exchange for it even if you used 100% of your hard work. Since they knew that they had come to the Feather Immortal Gathering in vain, all the disciples held back during the battles. Of course, there were also some disciples who harbored wishful thinking and blindly clung on to him. They wanted to use 100% of their hard work to exchange for less than 5% of the opportunity. Fortunately, in the next 2 days, Xiao Hua didn't encounter any opponents that were too valiant. When the disciples of the other sects saw Xiao Hua's outstanding flying skills, they basically gave up on trying to kill him. Instead, they carried out a rather disciplined competition with each other. Therefore, although Xiao Hua's results in the first round of the Feather Immortal Gathering weren't good, they were definitely not bad. He was actually ranked second among the 20 disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Other than Qian Mo from the Heavenly Thunder Palace, who was ranked 10th, he actually beat Kuan Fian from the Heavenly Thunder Palace and was ranked 23rd among the top 32 disciples. Kuan Fian was ranked 30th. Of course, those disciples who had built their foundation didn't participate in the second round of the competition. In the eyes of everyone, Xiao Hua's ranking was really a little unbelievable. But thinking about it carefully, on the first day of the Feather Immortal Gathering, Xiao Hua obtained 12 points and was ranked first in the Imperial Thunder Sect. In the subsequent battles, Xiao Hua mostly won, and only a few lost. It was normal for him to be ranked second. Moreover, don't forget that Xiao Hua had killed a disciple from the Changbai sect of Meng who had a magic treasure. If such a fierce person didn't enter the top 32, it could only mean that the heavens were unfair. This kind of result was worth mentioning to others, but in Xiao Hua's eyes, this wasn't what he was happy about. On the second day after Xiao Hua obtained the sword nurturing method, he carefully thought about how to bring the sword pill into his Naiwan palace at night to nourish it with his divine thoughts. He was surprised to find that in the heart of his Buddha Sarira, there were actually dots of Buddha light. These different colored Buddha light actually formed a faintly discernible Buddha fire. Xiao Hua was immediately overjoyed because to nurture the sword pill, one had to rely on the nascent vital energy in the Dantian and nascent divine thoughts in the Naiwan Palace. The Buddha Sarira had already taken shape, but the Buddha fire in the heart of the Buddha Sarira was still nascent. It could be used to nurture the sword pill. Naturally, Xiao Hua didn't know whether it would be a spiritual sword or a Buddha sword that would be nurtured. What he was thinking now was to not let the several thousand profound ingrass be given away in vain. Moreover, the sword pill was also picked up for free. It would be a waste not to refine it. The sword nurturing method that Zhang Yutong gave him was indeed real. After Xiao Hua sent the 9 sword pills and the small bucket that contained them into the heart of the Buddha Sarira, he began to comprehend the sword nurturing method. After several days of bitter cultivation, he actually gradually stepped onto the right track. The Buddha fire formed by the Buddha light was the same as sword origin, vital energy, or divine thoughts. It slowly covered the 9 sword pills and the small bucket together, slowly mending and nurturing them. Of course, Xiao Hua was still somewhat baffled. He wasn't too clear on how the heart of the Buddha appeared in the Buddha Sarira. Let's wait until the exquisite leaf scripture is complete. There must be a detailed record inside. This was the method that Xiao Hua thought of in his joy. Nurturing spiritual swords wasn't something that could be done overnight. Xiao Hua didn't plan to use flying swords for the time being. He just let them be nurtured in the Buddha fire. After the first stage of the Feather Immortal Gathering, there was only one day of rest. This day was the same as the first day of the Feather Immortal Gathering. Through the battles these days, many disciples obtained good things that they didn't need from their opponents. At this time, they could also take them to the square to exchange with others. Most importantly, some sects didn't want some of their things to fall outside. At this time, they could also take advantage of the situation. The sects that had these things offered a price. Generally speaking, the other sects wouldn't refuse. After all, this kind of thing could happen to both sides. In fact, Xiaohua got so many things from the storage bag of Fantong of the Changbai sect that day. If it wasn't for the fact that the quantity was too large, the Changbai sect could also make a request to the Imperial Thunder sect at this time. Of course, the premise was that Xiaohua was willing. Xiaohua was a money grubber in his bones. How could he return the things that were in his hands? Therefore, he was too lazy to go to this kind of trade gathering. He closed his door and cultivated bitterly. However, when it was close to noon, the restriction of the quiet room suddenly shook a little. Xiaohua frowned and opened the restriction. There was someone outside his door. Why is it this guy? Xiaohua's divine sense swept over and was stunned. It was Ku Xingxi of the Kunlun sect who was in line with him in front of the sword cultivator's door that day. Could it be he knows that I exchanged profound grass for the sword cultivators? Xiaohua's face was a little gloomy and uncertain. He felt a little guilty. That can't be right. Even if someone is looking for trouble, it should be the Taiching sect. Their profound grass was lost, Xiaohua thought, and could only open the door. He cupped his hands and said, I wonder what fellow Taoist wants. Seeing that it was Xiaohua, Ku Xingxi was very happy. He cupped his hands and said, I was wondering why fellow Taoist Zhao's name sounded so familiar. So it's really the fellow Taoist we met that night. Xiaohua's heart moved. He smiled apologetically and said, What? Could it be? Fellow Taoist, Ku, exchange for something that you deliberately wanted? How could it be? Who knows what those two sword cultivators wanted to exchange for? I and the other fellow Taoists knew that there were magic treasures that could be exchanged for, but we couldn't find what they needed. Then he asked Xiaohua mysteriously, Did fellow Taoist Xiao exchange for that magic treasure? Xiaohua shrugged and spread out his hands. If I were to exchange, would those two sword cultivators still be able to exchange with fellow Taoists? That's right. So, I also know that fellow Taoist Xiao is also empty-handed like I. Ku Xingxi said with a smile. Xiaohua was puzzled again. What? Fellow Taoist Ku came here today for this? Ku Xingxi shook his head repeatedly. Of course not. I was sent by martial ancestor Hanju to invite fellow Taoist Xiao for a chat. Hanju? Martial ancestor Han? Xiaohua was stunned. He naturally knew that this Hanju was a senior who practiced Buddhist cultivation techniques. But didn't he say that he would come to find me after the Feather Immortal Gathering? Moreover, he repeatedly warned me not to reveal my Buddhist cultivation. So why did he send a disciple to find me? Fellow Taoist Xiao? Do you know my martial ancestor Han? Ku Xingxi asked with a smile. Xiaohua heard and quickly shook his head. I don't know. I've never seen your martial ancestor Han. That's strange. Martial ancestor Han specifically asked I to invite fellow Taoist Xiao. I thought that fellow Taoist Xiao was very close to martial ancestor Han. Ku Xingxi was also somewhat confused. I don't dare to disobey an elder's orders. Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, Fellow Taoist Ku, lead the way. Won't we know once we go and take a look? If we delay for too long, won't Senior Han be unhappy? That's right. Ku Xingxi didn't care about getting closer to Xiaohua and hurriedly left with him. Just as they walked out of the pavilion, Yuan Bo and Mingu walked out of their quiet room and looked at each other. The two of them also followed Xiaohua and Ku Xingxi and watched the two of them enter the Kunlun sect pavilion. Yuan Bo and Mingu looked at each other, their eyes full of doubt. Mingu transmitted his voice. Senior brother Yuan Bo, this Xiaohua is becoming more and more strange. How does he know a disciple of the Kunlun sect of the Lian country? How would we know? But what we can be sure of is that there's definitely something wrong with this guy. He's definitely not a pure loose cultivator. You must have some other purpose for joining my Imperial Thunder sect. Yes, I also have the same idea. Mingus sneered. The two of them turned and entered the square, but their eyes were still wandering around the Kunlun sect pavilion. Chapter 1631. Kuxingxi brought Xiaohua to a rather large quiet room. Hanju was sitting inside with his eyes closed. When he saw Kuxingxi leading Xiaohua into the quiet room, he waved his hand. Kuxingxi bowed respectfully and left, not daring to say a word. Sit down. Hanju pointed at the futon beside him and said in a low voice. Yes, I will do as you say. Xiaohua respectfully sat down. Then, Hanju activated the restriction in the room. He stretched out his hand and pointed a few times in the air. A light curtain-like restriction appeared in the air and covered both Xiaohua and Hanju. Finally, Hanju took out a small, sparkling flag from his bosom and waved it. The world spirit chi in the surroundings was sucked dry. Another layer of three-colored brilliance flashed. It seemed like another layer of restriction had been added. After doing all this, Hanju transmitted his voice to Xiaohua. It's okay to be in the square in Tai Ching's sex territory, but you have to be careful here. I understand. Xiaohua also transmitted his voice. Didn't you say to contact me after the Feather Immortal Assembly? Won't it be much safer then? Haha, it's the same no matter when. Hanju smiled and said, after the Feather Immortal Assembly, you will return to the country of Shi with the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect. I have even less reason to look for you. Xiaohua nodded slightly and didn't say anything. The person in front of him was a gold core stage senior. In terms of cultivation of the Buddhist sect, he was even more unreachable. He could only be in a position arranged by others. I have been secretly observing you these few days. Hanju's face was filled with gratification. He said, to be honest, I didn't expect your skills to be so good even though your cultivation level is not high. That spear tip seems to be a demonic weapon. You used it to perfection. It's really amazing. I don't dare. It's just a trivial matter. It's not worthy of your attention. Xiaohua said humbly. Not at all. Not at all. Hanju shook his head and said, you don't know. Early in the ancient times, a group of cultivators only cultivated their bodies. They didn't cultivate their hearts or Tao. They could prove their Tao with just their celestial bodies. The Tao of breaking through with strength has existed since ancient times. Moreover, there's also the cultivation method of the Great Strength Vajra in the Buddhist sect. It emphasizes the strength of the body, becoming a saint with your physical body. Envy appeared in Xiaohua's eyes as he said in a low voice, it's a pity that Junior doesn't have such a technique and can only barely win in the battle. Hee, that's exactly why I called you here today. Hanju smiled and said, I wonder if you understood the golden puppet I gave you last time? Senior, please understand. Junior has seen a few superficial ones, and only feels that the profoundness within is limitless. Xiaohua nodded and said, but this golden NI seems to be incomplete. Great. Hanju clapped and said, it's just as you said. This is only the first half of the golden centipede. Yes, or perhaps it's the first part. As for the golden centipede after that, I don't have it myself. Then, Xiaohua someone understood. His eyes turned and asked, where can I find it? Do you know the ruins of the Buddhist sect? Hanju stared at Xiaohua and asked. Junior has seen it in his secret manual. It seems to be a very dangerous place. As for where it is, Junior doesn't know. Xiaohua said honestly. Yes, in fact, the so-called ruins of the Buddhist sect is just a general name. The real core is located. Besides this old man, I'm afraid no one else in this world knows. Hanju sighed. According to this old man's estimation, the second half of the golden centipede, as well as many Buddhist sect cultivation methods, are also inside. Xiaohua's heart moved. He smiled apologetically and said, Senior means, could it be that you want Junior to go with Senior? You? Hanju glanced at Xiaohua and shook his head. You want to go? Unfortunately, your cultivation is too low. This old man wants to help you, but I can't. Good, that's good. Xiaohua let out a long sigh of relief and secretly shouted in his heart. He was really afraid that Hanju wanted him to go to the ruins of the Buddhist sect. In front of Hanju, his cultivation was like a chicken. If he went, he would only be used by others. As if he could understand Xiao Hua's thoughts, Hanju glared at Xiao Hua and coldly snorted. Look at you. How can you become a capable person? If this old man goes to the ruins of the Buddhist sect, I will definitely go by myself. Bringing you along will only be a burden. Are you afraid that this old man will harm you? Xiao Hua said in panic. Junior doesn't dare. Junior's cultivation is too shallow. I don't dare to go to those dangerous places. Sigh, it's not your fault. Hanju sighed. Nowadays, the cultivation world is full of intrigue and intrigue. It's a life-and-death struggle. Where's the peace and prosperity of the Buddhist sect? The Buddhist sect's prosperous paradise is not something you can imagine. Paradise? Xiao Hua was stunned. What kind of place is that? What is recorded in the Golden Centipede is the Buddhist sect's ruins. As for whether there is still a paradise in this world after the Buddhist sect is destroyed, this old man doesn't know. Actually, to tell you the truth, Xiao Hua, this old man has been searching for where the Buddhist sect went. What? Wasn't the Buddhist sect destroyed? Xiao Hua asked in disbelief. Isn't this what Senior said? Little guy, don't forget that the Buddhist sect is the same as the Taoist sect. If someone says that the cultivation world was destroyed by the Buddhist sect, do you think it's possible? Xiao Hua frowned and thought for a long time, then shook his head and said, if it's my Imperial Thunder sect or the Kunlun sect that was destroyed, then it's possible. Even the entire country of Shi or the country of Lian was destroyed, but how could the cultivation orthodoxy be destroyed? Isn't there still the Cultivation Alliance in the far west? That's right. Hanju clapped and said, the sect of the Buddhist sect can be destroyed, but the orthodoxy of the Buddhist sect will definitely not be destroyed. As for where they went, that's really a mystery. Moreover, since the Buddhist sect's ruins are in our 3 cultivation countries, and our 3 cultivation countries are so isolated from the Cultivation Alliance in the far west, don't you think there's a problem? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. This junior only heard of the Cultivation Alliance before coming to the Feather Immortal Assembly. This junior has never thought about the Buddhist sect. Aren't you curious? Don't you want to cultivate the Vajrabhati? Vajrabhati? Xiao Hua was startled. Then he quickly shook his head. This junior only needs the Imperial Thunder sect's cultivation method. I don't dare to think about other things. You really don't want it? Hanju smiled and said, this old man saw that your divine strength was incomparable, so I wanted to teach you the incomplete cultivation method in my hands. There really is such a cultivation method? Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. With that, Hanju clapped his hand, and another golden puppet appeared in his hand. He asked, there is indeed such a cultivation method. However, the cultivation method of the Vajrabhati is different from the cultivation method and the cultivation method of the body cultivator. In this old man's opinion, it's really inconceivable. Xiao Hua reached out his hand, but withdrew it again. He shook his head and said, even Senior finds it difficult. This Junior doesn't want to see it. He take it. Hanju waved his hand, and the golden puppet flew to Xiao Hua. Hanju said in a lonely tone, it is fate that the Buddhist sect's cultivation method can be successfully cultivated by you and me. If this old man doesn't give you the Vajrabhati's cultivation method, who else can I give it to? Besides, the Vajrabhati is also an ultimate technique of the Buddhist sect. Cultivating it together with the relic can complement each other. Your relic's cultivation method is too low level. Perhaps you can use this Vajrabhati to make up for it. Xiao Hua was secretly delighted and said with a smile, I don't dare to refuse the elder's gift. This junior thanks you. Hanju waved his hand, then took out a small pale golden Buddha from his storage bag. He flew to Xiao Hua and said, take this thing first. When your cultivation reaches the middle or late stage of foundation establishment, then immerse your divine sense into it. There will be a message left for you by this old man inside. Remember, it's best to look at it when you're at the late stage of foundation establishment. There's no benefit in looking at it earlier. Yes, this junior understands. Xiao Hua kept the small golden Buddha and replied respectfully. After that, Hanju didn't ask Xiao Hua anything else. He closed his eyes and slowly told Xiao Hua about some of his experiences, taboos, and detours in cultivating the Buddhist sex relic. Xiao Hua was overjoyed when he heard it and quickly memorized it in his heart. After a long time, Hanju reminded Xiao Hua, "During these few days of the Feather Immortal Assembly, if you have time, you can come to this old man's place. If someone asks, just say that this old man met you when he was traveling in the country of Shi and had a good impression of you. I gave you some pointers. Yes, this is not a problem. This kid used to be a loose cultivator. This answer is the best." Xiao Hua stood up respectfully and said, "Oh, this is this old man's keepsake. Take one. If Jin Qing asks, let him take a look." Hanju waved his hand, and a jade pendant flew into Xiao Hua's hand. On the jade pendant was a lofty mountain ridge with a round moon hanging high in the sky. The jade pendant was cold to the touch and was somewhat icy. Senior's consideration is really meticulous. "Thank you, Senior." Xiao Hua kept the jade pendant and bowed to express his gratitude. "Yes, you can go now." Hanju waved his hand and said, "The second stage of the Feather Immortal Gathering is a competition for the reputation of the various sections. Although your cultivation is not bad, there is no need for you to get involved. It is better to focus on your cultivation." "I understand. I do not want to participate in the first stage of the competition. However, due to the rules of the Feather Immortal Gathering and my master's reputation, I have no choice but to participate." I heard that. You also gain a lot of benefits?" Hanju said with a smile. Xiao Hua slapped his forehead and said with a smile, "I was careless." As he spoke, he slapped his hand and took out a soul concentrating pill for golden core stage cultivators and handed it to Hanju. He said, "I do not know about golden core stage cultivators' elixirs. This soul concentrating pill is what my Imperial Thunder Sect's ancestor Jin wants. Senior, do you want a I do not need the soul concentrating pill. My Buddhist sect cultivates the soul. Take out the other elixirs." Hanju did not hold back and said with a smile, "Yes, I have been rude." Xiao Hua hurriedly took out one elixir from each of the elixirs. Hanju took a few glances and pointed his finger. A three-colored elixir flew into Xiao Hua's hand. "This is the soul nourishing pill. It is used by golden core stage cultivators to nourish their spiritual sense. It has other uses that others do not know about." Hanju said with a smile, "The Buddhist sect's cultivation techniques are marvelous. However, when it comes to refining elixirs, it is far inferior to the Taoist sect." Chapter 1632. Is that so? Xiao Hua smiled and picked up the other medicinal pill, respectfully delivering it in front of Hanju. "Senior, you've given me a lot of pointers. So this medicinal pill is my filial piety." Hanju glanced at Xiao Hua and nodded. "Fine, I really do need this medicinal pill, so I won't argue with you. If it weren't for this mind enchantment fruit being too hard to find, I'd also refine some myself." As he spoke, he very casually put away, "To Taoist cultivators, this mind nourishment pill only mends divine sense, but to Buddhist cultivators, it's nurturing relics." Hanju also didn't hold back and said in a low voice, "When your cultivation reaches core formation, you can also try taking it yourself." Xiao Hua put the medicinal pills into his storage pouch and said with a wry smile, "I don't even dare to hope for foundation establishment, so how can I dare to think about core formation now? Ha ha ha. I won't say much. You'll naturally know in the future." Hanju laughed loudly and waved his hand, indicating for Xiao Hua to leave. Just as Hanju opened the quiet room's restriction, Xiao Hua's eyes turned and he said with a smile, "Senior, I'll take the liberty to ask, what? Is there something else?" Hanju stared blankly. "That Senior definitely has the pill formula for the mind nourishment pill, right? What's this mind enchantment fruit? If possible, can Senior bestow the pill formula for the mind nourishment pill to me?" Xiao Hua said somewhat hesitantly. "If I come across it in the future, I can also exchange it to show my filial piety to Senior." Okay, this pill formula isn't anything special. I obtained it from a Changbai Sect Foundation establishment cultivator in my early years. Hanju didn't hide it. Waving his hand, and a jade slip flew out. Xiaohua received it, then bowed and took his leave, leaving the quiet room. Outside the quiet room, Xingxi had been waiting respectfully the whole time. Seeing Xiaohua come out, he hurriedly welcomed him and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Xiao." Xiaohua had already seen him and immediately cupped his hands with a smile. "Fellow Taoist Ku, so your sect senior Hanju is a senior I met in my early years when I was traveling. I didn't know his name before, but now that I've met him again, I'm really happy. Fellow Taoist, Zhao's a lucky chance." Xingxi's face was full of envy. Martial ancestor Hanju probably has a good reputation in our humble sect. He's very approachable. Fellow Taoist, Xiao must have received a lot of guidance in his early years. Xiaohua nodded. That's right. Back then, I didn't know that Senior Hanju was a core formation cultivator. I even thought he was a foundation establishment cultivator. After a few more words, Xiaohua cupped his hands and took his leave. When Xiaohua walked out of the Kunlun Sect's pavilion, Yuan Bo and Mingge, who had been waiting outside for a long time, immediately followed from a distance, wanting to see where Xiaohua was going. Who would have thought that Xiaohua would return to his quiet room and not come out for the whole night until the next morning, not waiting for Xiaohua to open the restriction of the quiet room? The walls of the quiet room flashed with brilliance. Who's visiting so early? Xiaohua opened his eyes and thought somewhat unhappily. Yesterday, when he returned to the quiet room, he carefully savored the cultivation experience of the Buddhist sect Saraira that Hanju had told him. He firmly remembered every word and sentence in his heart and thought about it over and over again. At this moment, he was still comparing them with his own Saraira with great interest. Now that he saw someone come to visit, he was naturally unhappy. When he opened the restriction of the quiet room, he heard Sun Shu's voice. "Junior Martial Brother Xiao, hurry, hurry. The second stage of the competition is about to be announced." Many disciples have already gone out to wait. Junior Martial Brother Xiao is in the middle of the competition. Could it be that you're not anxious? Anxious? Xiaohua shook his head slightly. This 23rd place was really a bit too much. According to his previous thoughts, he didn't plan to enter the top 32 at all. However, seeing Sun Shu greet him, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Senior Martial Sister Sun, I was really lucky to be able to enter the top 32. The second stage of the competition is even more intense. I don't dare to have extravagant hopes." Sun Shu waved her hand and said, "Hurry up and go. We've already entered the second stage of the competition. How can it still be up to you? Didn't you hear? The disciples who just enter the top 10 will all get a reliance pill." "What? Reliance pill?" "The legendary medicinal pill that can increase one's chances of reaching foundation establishment." Xiaohua's eyes lit up, and he said anxiously, "This thing, our Imperial Thunder sect doesn't even know what kind of spiritual grass to use. How can their Tai Ching sect have it?" Sun Shu smiled and shook her head. "How would I know? It's all said by others. But since someone said it, there's naturally a source of information. It's better to believe it than not." "That's right." Xiaohua's heart was also filled with energy. He quickly followed Sun Shu out of the pavilion. At this time, there were already many people in the square. They were all disciples from various sects who came to watch the competition. Xiaohua and the others stood still and waited for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. In the air in front of the square, there was a loud bang as a signal similar to a firework exploded. Immediately after, a huge light screen appeared where the firework came from. The light screen was overflowing with colorful lights and all kinds of colors mixed with each other. It was like a pot of porridge that had been opened. "Little friends." Rinju appeared in front of the light screen and said with a smile, "More than half of the Feather Immortal Assembly has been successfully held. In the first stage of the competition, 12 disciples have successfully reached foundation establishment. This is the highest number of foundation establishment disciples in the history of the Feather Immortal Assembly. This also proves the correctness of the Feather Immortal Assembly held by the three kingdoms of cultivation. The experience of our ancestors has already proved that although meditation can increase one's cultivation, it's not enough to break through the realm. Cultivators who have been stuck at the bottleneck for a long time should experience more and experience more life and death. Only then can they temper their Taoist heart and improve their realm. 32 disciples have been selected in the first stage of the Feather Immortal Assembly. These 32 disciples will be eliminated in the second stage of the competition to determine the top 4. Of course, if any disciple reaches foundation establishment in the competition, he will have to withdraw from the competition and the opponent will win. Let's not talk about the reward for the top 4. In this Feather Immortal Assembly, our Tai Ching sect sincerely requests the Immortal Alliance to bestow 8 excuse pills. The top 8 of this competition will receive an extra excuse pill. Boom! The disciples in the square all started to discuss among themselves. They had come here to verify the news of the Reliance pills. Although the number of Reliance pills was not the same, the Reliance pills really did exist, so how could they not be excited? Immortal Alliance? Xiao Hua, who was in the square, was slightly stunned. He said to himself, "What is this Immortal Alliance? Why haven't I heard of it? What do you think?" Fellow Taoist Xiao, if you can enter the top 8, the excuse pill will increase your chances of reaching foundation establishment by 20%. Sun Shu said with an envious expression. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He transmitted his voice. "Senior Sun, this Immortal Alliance? What is it?" Immortal Alliance? Sun Shu was slightly surprised. Fellow Taoist, Xiao doesn't know about the Immortal Alliance? If I knew, would I still ask Senior Sun? Xiao Hua shook his head. Then, fellow Taoist, Xiao knows about the War of Immortals and Demons? Demon-resisting Valley? Sun Shu asked. Xiao Hua continued to transmit his voice. "I've heard of it, but I'm not very clear about it." Sun Shu was about to speak when Renju, who was in midair, raised her voice again. "Invite the leaders of each sect to come over and arrange the battle situation." When Sun Shu heard this, she became excited. She said in a low voice, "Let's talk about this later. Look at who your opponent is." Xiao Hua looked up and saw that the light screen in midair was divided into 2 parts. The lower half was still flowing with light and overflowing with color, chaotic, while the upper half was calm. Moreover, at the very bottom, there was a row of 32 small cubes. Above the cubes, there was another row of 16 cubes. Above that, there were 8 cubes for cubes, 2 cubes, and 1 cubes. Xiao Hua understood that these 32 squares were the names of the 32 disciples. The 16 squares in the second row were the names of the disciples who won the first round. The one at the top should be the champion of this competition. Sure enough, following Renju's voice, the 12 golden core cultivators of the thunder-controlling sect, Liao Zhouquan of the Changbai sect, and others flew to Renju's side. Renju smiled and said, "My Tai Ching sect is organizing this Feather Immortal gathering. Therefore, my Tai Ching sect will not participate in the arrangement. Once everyone is arranged, the remaining seats will belong to my Tai Ching sect's disciples." Which one of you will go first? I will go first. The golden core cultivator of the Immortal Ascending sect, Yang Fan, stepped forward and smiled. "I will send Su Fu, Wu Qiming, and Yi Shoujing to the top 32. As he said that, 3 shiny tokens appeared in his hand. Yang Fan waved his hand, and the 3 tokens flew into the lower half of the flowing light. The entire brilliance scattered, and the 3 tokens could be seen flying around casually. After a while, each of them flew into a different grid. Su Fu's name landed on the 16th grid, Wu Qiming's name landed on the 5th grid, and Yi Shoujing's name landed on the 18th grid. "Great!" Yang Fan clapped his hands and smiled. "Ai's luck is not bad." As he spoke, he retreated to the side. Its eyes turned. The golden core cultivator of the Immortal Music sect, Tian Wei, stepped forward with a smile and said, "My Immortal Music sect only has 2 disciples in the top 32. Yang Fan, who was beside him, smiled and said, "Your Immortal Music sect already has a female disciple in the foundation establishment stage. What are you not satisfied with?" Huh. Tianwei laughed and waved his hand. Two shiny tokens also flew into the air. After a while, two tokens appeared. One was Zhong Tianxing, who landed on the 11th place, and the other was Li Yu, who landed on the 31st place. Ai's luck is not bad, too. Tianwei smiled and retreated half a step. Jinxing stepped forward and said, "My thunder-controlling sect has 3 disciples in the foundation establishment stage. Let's see Ai's luck." As she spoke, she also threw 3 tokens into the air. In a moment, the results were revealed. However, Jinxing's expression was a little absent-minded. She shook her head and smiled bitterly. "Looks like Ai's luck is not as good as yours." Everyone in the square was also discussing. Qianmo's token landed on the 3rd place, while Xiaohua and Kuan Fian's tokens landed on the 20th and 19th places respectively. In other words, in the first round of the competition, Xiaohua and Kuan Fian would face off against each other. Only one of the 2 disciples from the thunder-controlling sect could enter the second round. This kind of situation, where disciples from the same sect met each other, was extremely rare in the Feather Immortal Gathering. It had to be said that Jinxing's luck was really bad. Chapter 1633. Kuan Fian, who was standing not too far away from Xiaohua, had a bad look on her face. In the first round of the competition, her ranking was not as good as Xiaohua's. If it was another group, perhaps the ranking would not be comparable. However, she was in the same group as Xiaohua. Their opponents were exactly the same. If Xiaohua could suppress her, Xiaohua's cultivation would definitely be higher than hers. She really did not expect that Xiaohua, who only knew how to run away during the selection of the Imperial Thunder Sect, would improve so much in the Feather Immortal Assembly. Although she did not break through to the Foundation Establishment stage through the life and death competition of the Feather Immortal Assembly, her cultivation did indeed improve. Not only her, but Li Xiaoxiao, Sun Shu, and the others also improved. However, compared to Xiaohua, they were still too far away. Compared to Kuan Fian, Xiaohua's expression was very normal. It seemed that there was no change at all. This made Kuan Fian feel that Xiaohua had a card up his sleeve. Then, the Golden Core Stage representatives of the various sects also threw out the nameplates of their disciples. The 32 disciples were finally arranged. Meng Country, Celestial Ascension Sect. Su Fu, 16th. Wu Qiming, 5th. Hishojing, 18th. Xianlu Sect. Zhong Tianxing, 11th. Liu, 31st. Chongbai Sect. Ma Jumin, 15th. Lu Xishu, 27th. Taiching Sect. Fan Xiaoer, 10th. Xiaoming Han, 21st. Lian Country. Nanming Sect. Lu Qi, 4th. Yang Difu, 30th. Xie Xiaoxing, 6th. Kunlun Sect. Kuxing Shi, 25th. Zhang Haoran, 13th. Xintian Sect. Yin Feiming, 9th. Zhang Yihao, 32nd. Utopia Sect. Yang Fancheng, 8th. Zhang Xian, 24th. Shi Country. Huanhua Sect. Kai Hongxia, 2nd. Yin Guichong, 28th. Zhang Shiqian, 22nd. Imperial Thunder Sect. Qianmo, 3rd. Xiaohua, 20th. Kuan Fian, 19th. Xuanyan Sect. Zhuoqing'an, 17th. Zhang Xiaojing, 29th. Qiqiao Sect. Qianming, 7th. Tang Xiangwen, 14th. Wei, 26th. Shanghuazong. Fan Wentao, 1st. LV Yin, 12th. Qi Jiqin, 23rd. Jinxing was originally in a bad mood. However, when she saw that there were 3 disciples from the Imperial Thunder Sect among the 32 disciples, which was more than the previous Feather Immortal Gathering's 2 disciples. It was even more than the number of disciples from the Xuanyan school in the country of Xi. As for Xiaohua, he looked at his own position. After fighting with Kuan Fian, his next match would be against the winner of Zhang Xiaojing and Yang Difu's match. One of them was taught by Xuanyan, the other from Nanming Sect. He wasn't familiar with them, so he didn't know how much stronger they were compared to him. "All right, disciples, your seats have been arranged. Go back and rest for a while. After an hour, we will begin the second stage of the Feather Immortal Gathering," Renju said loudly. After everyone left the square, The golden core stage masters from the various sects also descended from the sky. Jiang Changhong from Xuanyin sect had an ugly expression on her face. When she saw Jin Xing, she mocked herself. Fellow Taoist Jin, congratulations. This year, not only did you have a disciple in the foundation establishment stage, there are also 3 disciples who entered the second stage. That Xian Mo is actually ranked 10th among the 32 disciples. This is really worthy of congratulations. Jin Xing's face was also filled with regret. Sigh. That is the reward for the disciples' hard work. Furthermore, the points of the first stage are also related to the groups. If your sect was in the same group as the Imperial Thunder sect, I'm afraid that there would be more disciples entering. Seeing Jin Xing's humility, Jiang Changhong's mood was slightly better. She nodded and said, yes, this is also luck. Of course, I's luck is not good. It's a pity that when 2 disciples went up, they were both from the same sect. Only 1 disciple can enter the second stage. What a pity. Fellow Taoist Jin, out of these 2 disciples, who do you think will win? Jin Xing looked at Jiang Changhong in confusion. She didn't understand why he was so concerned about the Imperial Thunder sect disciples. Hee, I was just casually asking. Jiang Changhong quickly smiled and said, I'm sure that there are many disciples who didn't participate in the second stage of the competition who are very curious, right? Sigh, fellow Taoist Jiang is right. Jin Xing pondered for a moment. She hesitated for a moment and said, according to I's observation, Xiao Hua should win. Why? This Xiao Hua seems to only be at the early stage of the qi refining stage. Although he has advanced by leaps and bounds in this period of time and seems to be showing signs of entering the middle stage, compared to that female disciple called Kuan Fian, he is still lacking by quite a bit, right? Stage is only one aspect, Jin Xing said. She suddenly paused and smiled. Wouldn't you know if you look at their rankings? Xiao Hua's ranking is higher than Kuan Fian's. Hee, that's right, that's right. Jiang Changhong smiled and walked away. Strange, why would this guy be so interested in a qi refining cultivator for my Imperial Thunder sect? Jin Xing was puzzled. Fellow Taoist Jin, not far away, Xiong Fei called out, the 2 female sword cultivators from the Xinjian sect have already stayed in the Hao realm for quite some time. It seems like they haven't found what they want yet. Should we go take a look? Hee, what good things can a small cultivator of the drawing sword first stage have? Jin Xing smiled. I heard the disciples say that they have magic treasures. Why don't we go take a look? Then fellow Taoist Xiong, please. Jin Xing nodded and said. Not to mention that Jin Xing and Xiong Fei went to see Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuhe. Xiao Hua followed, everyone back to the pavilion. Just as he sat down in the quiet room, he saw Qian Diheng calling for him. What? Martial Uncle Jin, you call me over? What's the matter? Xiao Hua was very surprised. Qian Diheng smiled. What can it be? It's just a routine encouragement. It seems that senior martial brother Qian Mo already went over. All right. Xiao Hua followed Qian Diheng into Jin Yu's quiet room. Jin Yu's quiet room was a little dark. Jin Yu sat on the chair at the head of the table. Xiao Hua stood about 10 feet in front of Jin Yu respectfully. After waiting for a while, Jin Yu didn't say anything. Xiao Hua felt a little strange and sneaked a glance in front of him. Coincidentally, Jin Yu was also looking at Xiao Hua. Their gazes met and Jin Yu smiled. Xiao Hua, I called you over today to ask your opinion about the Feather Immortal Gathering. It's pretty good. When the disciples of the various sects spar, not only can they get to know each other better, they can also increase their cultivation. This kind of competition should be held frequently. Xiao Hua blurted out. Ha ha. Jin Yu laughed and shook his head. Don't keep me in suspense. Your master and I are old friends. If he was here, he definitely wouldn't say such things. Xiao Hua smiled apologetically. Then I'll have to ask Martial Uncle Jin for advice. What do I have to say? If you didn't know when you first came here, how could you not know now? Jin Yu sneered. Now, how could you not know that the Feather Immortal Gathering is an opportunity for the disciples of the various sects to fight each other to the death? It's an opportunity for them to grow amidst the bloodshed. Xiao Hua was speechless and didn't reply. Actually, I've been observing you. Ever since you registered for the Feather Immortal Gathering's disciple selection at the Diligent Thunder Hall, I've been paying attention to you. Jinyu said in an amiable manner. At that time, your flying speed was extremely fast, but your cultivation wasn't very good. Therefore, you were lucky enough to obtain the last qualification to participate in the Feather Immortal Gathering. I won't hide it from you. That day, I wanted to persuade your master. He might not know what the Feather Immortal Gathering is like, but I know it very well. However, participating in the Feather Immortal Gathering is an honor for the Imperial Thunder Sect. Your myriad Thunder Valley hasn't had a disciple participate in it for many years. I can't embarrass you. After coming to the Hao Realm, I have been secretly protecting you. I don't want you to get injured during the competition. I'm sure you don't know about this. Xiao Hua said respectfully. How would I know about Martial Uncle Jin's cultivation? I'm grateful for Martial Uncle Jin's protection. I didn't mean to tell you all this. I didn't want you to know about it. However, you exceeded my expectations. Not only did you not get injured during the competition, you even managed to enter the top 32. This improvement is really huge. I can't help it. Senior Martial Brother is really good at teaching disciples. When I return to the Imperial Thunder Sect, I'll definitely report this to the Vice Sect Leader. The Thunderous Palace will definitely reward the Myriad Thunder Valley greatly. Xiao Hua cursed in his heart, but he still maintained a respectful expression on his face. He smiled and said, Martial Uncle Jin, this disciple understands your feelings. If there's anything you need this disciple to do, as long as this disciple has the ability to do it, this disciple will definitely do it. Good, good, good. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Jinyu clapped his hands and said, as expected of a disciple who was born as a loose cultivator. You have a deep understanding of my intentions. Since that's the case, I won't stand on ceremony. Jinyu looked at the restrictions around the room that had been activated and said, I called you here this time because I want you to do something for me. And it's extremely easy for you. It's as easy as blowing off dust. Oh, Xiao Hua didn't understand. Please instruct me. It's very simple. During the competition, it's as easy as blowing off dust. Jin, you transmitted his voice. What? Xiao Hua's expression changed. What else was there to say? Joining the fight without any effort, wasn't it just to make him lose to Kuan Fian? Martial nephew Xiao. Don't be so surprised, Jinyu said with a smile. Your cultivation has increased by leaps and bounds, but your foundation is still not enough. Even if you win this competition, are you sure you can defeat all the opponents you meet later on? If there's any mishap, you'll be throwing away the face of my Imperial Thunder Sect. For such a big matter, I won't interfere. After that, he looked at Xiao Hua's gloomy face and said, it's a good thing that you can get a ranking, but you have to look at the big picture. Your ranking and my Imperial Thunder Sect's face, that's secondary. You can't disregard the interests of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples just because of your own personal interests. My Imperial Thunder Sect took you in and gave you cultivation methods, pills, and a place for you to cultivate. At the crucial moment, you should make some concessions for my Imperial Thunder Sect. This is what every Imperial Thunder Sect disciple should do. It's also the awareness and responsibility of every Imperial Thunder Sect disciple. Jinyu looked at Xiao Hua and said word by word, as a disciple of my Imperial Thunder Sect, you should also put the 3 words Imperial Thunder Sect in front of Xiao Hua's name. Disciple. Disciple understands. Xiao Hua took a deep breath and said with a smile, Disciple understands. Great. Jinyu looked down on Xiao Hua. He didn't expect Xiao Hua to be so easily intimidated. He praised, Martial nephew Xiao is indeed generous. You'll definitely become a great talent in the future. I have high hopes for you. I wouldn't dare. Xiao Hua bowed and said, However, this disciple's cultivation foundation is shallow. My current cultivation level is still okay, but when it comes to building my foundation, it will definitely be very difficult. Therefore, this disciple is still very concerned about that reliance pill. As expected of a rogue cultivator. Greedy, Jinyu sneered in his heart. However, he said, Martial nephew Xiao, this borrowing pill, is not an easy thing. Let's not talk about whether you can defeat Cultivation. Even if you win, there are still 2 experts behind you. It'll be difficult for you to enter the top 8. Moreover, to be honest, I don't have the borrowing pill. Even if I want to give it to you, I can't. Then it's a little difficult. Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and smiled apologetically. Disciples saw that during the Feather Immortal gathering, some disciples were even willing to throw away their lives for the sake of building their foundation. Disciple might also do something unexpected for the sake of this immunity pill. Jinyu frowned and thought for a while. He patted his storage bag and took out a jade bottle. He said, I have a building foundation pill here. I think you can use it in the future. Xiao Hua didn't take it. He smiled and said, when Master and Senior Brother met, he already gave me a building foundation pill. I don't think I can use it. Martial Uncle, if you have any cultivation techniques or the recipe for the borrowing pill, you can show it to me. Martial Nephew, Xiao. Jinyu sneered. This old man called you here only to reason with you, to compare the righteousness of the Imperial Thunder sect with your petty profits. If you don't want to listen and insist on acting recklessly, this old man won't be able to stop you. Xiao Hua thought for a while and nodded. My cultivation base is shallow. 1 building foundation pill won't be useful. How about 3? Snobbish person. As expected, this is a blatant bargaining. Jinyu cursed in his heart. He patted his hand and took out 2 more jade bottles. He threw them in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua hesitated. He didn't want to take them. Xiao Hua, if you don't want them, Jinyu said angrily. I want them. Xiao Hua took the 3 jade bottles with a wave of his sleeve. He cupped his hands and said, Martial Uncle, if there is nothing else, I will go now. The competition is about to start. I still have to effortlessly compete with Senior Sister Kuan. Yes, there is nothing else. You can go now. Jinyu waved his sleeve and removed the restriction on the room. Xiao Hua walked out of the room expressionlessly. Chapter 1634. He actually wants this young master to lose to Cultivation. His grandmother. If this young master can't pass the 2nd round, does he think he can? Xiao Hua silently cursed in his heart. Is he just trying to get a good ranking? What's the use of that thing? I didn't intend to do anything. If it weren't for the excuse pill, I would have admitted defeat as soon as I got on the stage. I still have some time before I reach the foundation establishment stage. The excuse pill can only increase my chances by 30%, so it probably won't be of much use. I'll take advantage of the situation and get 3 foundation establishment pills for free. It's not a bad deal. Alas, 30% chance of reaching the foundation establishment stage. Xiao Hua had never received any guidance from orthodox cultivators since he was young. How could he understand the meaning of 30%? If it were any other disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, even if they had to give in to Jinyu, the price of giving in would be at least 10 foundation establishment pills. Of course, among all the disciples participating in the Feather Immortal Assembly, only Xiao Hua, a disciple with no background, could be given such an assignment by Jinyu. As for the others, he had to think about it carefully and make a balance between the Earth Thunder Palace and the other Thunder Palaces. When Xiao Hua arrived at the square, he saw 16 slightly larger illusory arrays in the air. The 16 large illusory arrays were lined up in a row, and there were many disciples of the Taiching sect and disciples of other sects participating in the Feather Immortal Assembly. At this time, the illusory arrays were different from the previous ones. Not only were they 10 times larger than before, but the light shields outside the illusory arrays obviously had a magnifying effect. Except for a few of the light shields, which were still overflowing with 5 colors, only 2 names kept flashing on them. The other light shields clearly showed the scene of 2 people fighting inside the illusory arrays. Quick, Xiao Hua, hurry up. You'll be forced to forfeit in 15 minutes. Xiao Hua's figure had just appeared on the square when the voices of Sun Shu, Li Xiaoxiao, and Qian Dihing sounded. The 3 of them were anxious. Seeing their expressions, Xiao Hua's cold heart was slightly moved. He quickly stepped forward and cupped his hands, saying, I have some trivial matters to attend to. Sorry. Qian Dihing looked at Xiao Hua and said in a low voice, I thought you couldn't get out. How could that be? Xiao Hua faintly smiled. Stop talking. Hurry up and go in. Sun Shu pointed his finger at one of the illusory arrays. Xiao Hua's name was on it, and it flickered slightly. Where's Senior Sister Cohen? Have they already gone in? That's right. Li Xiao was also a little anxious. Xiao Hua was escorted to the illusory array by the crowd. Xiao Hua took out his talisman and activated his magic power, throwing himself into the illusory array. The 5 colors on the illusory array flashed, and the 5 colors on the light barrier disappeared. On top of the orange-color volcano, Xiao Hua and Kuan Fian stood facing each other. Senior Sister Li, who do you think will win? Sun Shu looked at the two and couldn't help but ask. Naturally, it's Xiao Hua. Li Xiao said very calmly. I think so too. Sun Shu heaved a sigh of relief and agreed. Qian Dihing glanced at the two and transmitted his voice. I don't think so. If something unexpected happens later, don't be surprised. Li Xiao and Sun Shu were a little shocked. They unconsciously looked at each other and thoughtfully looked at the light barrier. They saw Xiao Hua standing in front of Kuan Fian with his arms crossed and coldly smiled. Senior Sister Kuan, little brother greets you. Good. Junior brother Xiao, please show mercy. Kuan Fian's expression was normal. The panic from before had long disappeared. With a clap of her hand, a string of jade beads like magic artifacts was taken out by her. Activating her magic power, the beads one by one flew into the air. The beads were of different colors and released different lights. Xiao Hua saw this and sighed slightly. He also clapped his hands, and the black dust flew into the air. Xiao Hua's face had an indescribable smile as he said, Senior Sister Kuan, little brother is going to attack. Kuan Fian's expression changed slightly and nodded. Junior brother Xiao, please. Okay. Xiao Hua activated the black dust, and a 1-chi-wide yellow light pillar flew out from the black dust and directly covered Kuan Fian. Kuan Fian also activated the string of jade beads, and as it spun, it blocked above his head. Shwa! The light beams scattered down, and the grains of sand swarmed onto the string of jade beads. The string of jade beads flickered with endless brilliance and began to rotate even more violently. In an instant, a powerful suction force was emitted, and the light beam was actually sucked into the string of jade beads, disappearing without a trace. The suction force of the string of jade beads was indeed strong, but to Xiao Hua, his magic power was still not enough. He activated the black dust and easily rushed out. Xiao Hua could even split the light pillar of the black dust into several parts and attack Kuan Fian separately. Of course, wasn't this just a show? Xiao Hua's face showed a look of surprise. He pointed with his finger, and the black dust's brilliance immediately retracted and flew in a semicircle in the air and back into Xiao Hua's hand. Senior Sister Kuan, your magic power is profound and far from what I can compare to. Since we are all from the same sect, and we still have to face the disciples of other sects in the second round, I can only admit defeat. I hope that Senior Sister Cohen can win in the first round and take first place. Xiao Hua kept the black dust and bowed as he said. Yes, since Junior Brother Xiao is so focused on the big picture, I won't be unreasonable. I will definitely carry Junior Brother Xiao's hopes and the hopes of all the disciples of the same sect and charge into the top 8. Kuan Fian didn't dare to keep the string of jade beads and only stood in the air and bowed in return. Xiao Hua had a faint smile on his face and glanced at the string of jade beads that were still shining brightly. He activated his flying technique and left the illusion array. Just as Xiao Hua left the illusion array released a red light, and there was also the sound of music. On the light screen, Kuan Fian's name appeared, and after a few flashes, it disappeared. Looking at the huge mirror in the air, Kuan Fian's name in the second round of squares was shining. It's over just like that? Xiao Chang's disciples, who wanted to watch a good show, were all dumbfounded. But soon after, everyone came to their senses. What could they say? Their mouths were mumbling. Some were cursing and some were regretful. They dispersed. There were still 15 battles to the side, enough for them to watch. How is it? Qian Dihing looked at the gloomy Sun Shu and Li Xiaoxiao and transmitted his voice. Do you feel very surprised? AI. There's nothing surprising. Li Xiaoxiao shook her head. I should have thought of it long ago. Sun Shu felt a burst of sadness for no reason and forced a smile. Don't want to think like that, but the truth is like this, Qian Dihing said and pointed at Xiao Hua who flew out. But I don't see this guy's depressed look. Sure enough, Xiao Hua who flew out of the illusion array was as calm as water, without any emotions or annoyance. Junior brother Xiao, Sun Shu didn't know what to say but still called out. A loss is a loss. It's nothing. There's still a next time. Haha, I lost? Xiao Hua said with a smile, then looked at the crowd and said, Everyone, let's have fun here. I gained some insights from the battle just now, and I will go back to the quiet room to cultivate. If there is nothing special, can you call me after the battle in the Feather Immortal Assembly is over? Fellow Taoist Xiao, are you okay? Sun Shu was a bit worried. Xiao Hua didn't look cold like before. Even Li Xiaoxiao was a bit concerned. That's right, junior brother Xiao, let's watch the other battles. Maybe you can gain some insights. Haha, I really gained some insights, goodbye. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and quickly walked out of the square. Looking at Xiao Hua's back, that wasn't depressed at all. Even Qian Diheng was a bit surprised. Maybe he can gain more by giving up than by not giving up? But what is better than the reliance pill? Not far away, Jin Yu smiled and looked at the two disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect with satisfaction. Jin Yu, why did the battle between Xiao Hua and Kuan Fian end so quickly? Behind Jin Yu, Jin Qing's surprised voice sounded. Martial uncle, Xiao Hua only tested Kuan Fian's strength and felt that he couldn't win, so he gave up. I think he didn't want to waste Kuan Fian's spiritual energy because of his useless battle. Jin Yu smiled apologetically. This Xiao Hua has a good view of the big picture, as expected of a responsible disciple. Is that so? Jin Qing didn't understand. That is the reliance pill. Every disciple who wants to build their foundation wants it. Isn't he tempted? I don't know. Maybe it's because he is still in the middle of the 12th level of qi refining. Jin Yu explained, he is still quite far away from building his foundation. So he gave this opportunity to a disciple who needs it more. Noble character and unquestionable integrity? Haha. Jin Qing's face showed an indescribable expression. Jin Yu smiled and pointed. Chinamo is over there, and he seems to have the upper hand. Shall I accompany Martial Uncle to take a look? Good. I want to see the prowess of the Imperial Thunder sect's disciples. Jin Qing clapped her hands and smiled. Not to mention that everyone was watching from the square and was impressed by the brilliant techniques of the disciples in the illusion array. Xiao Hua returned to his meditation room and activated the restriction. He took out the golden puppet and released his Buddhist awareness. After looking at it carefully for a moment, a trace of astonishment appeared on his face. He thought to himself, this great Vajradharma body's cultivation method is really weird. It is actually a method that I have never thought of before, using pain to stimulate the body and train the Dharma body. Is this the Buddhist sect's Zongyi forbearance? But from the cultivation level of this technique, I seem to have reached the 3rd level of this technique out of the 9 levels. This seems to be related to the fire marrow flame crystal's flame that I absorbed previously. Thinking of the 130 million mysterious dots in his body, Xiao Hua had a headache. This thing must be very useful, but he had no idea how to cultivate it. Perhaps the next time he has the chance to absorb the fire marrow flame crystal, he would try using this great strength Vajra Dharma body's cultivation method. Soon after, Xiao Hua put away the golden puppet, and with a flip of his hand, he took out the jade slip containing the cloud-suppressing seal. He immersed his divine sense into it and began to read it carefully. Chapter 1635. Xiao Hua looked at the jade slip again and again until he confirmed that he had completely memorized it. Only then did he put the jade slip into his space and then closed his eyes to think. After a long time, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and the small cloud-suppressing seal flew into the air. Looking at this tattered little thing that didn't have any splendor, Xiao Hua thought to himself, if this thing was placed aside, no matter how I look at it, it's impossible for me to treat it as a magic treasure. Thinking, he stretched out his finger and tried to force a drop of blood out. However, after a few tries, the blood could not flow out from his finger. Huh? What's going on? Xiao Hua was very puzzled. It seemed that a few years ago in Zhenlei Palace's Jade Archive Hall, he had easily forced out a drop of blood. Suddenly, Xiao Hua remembered the record of the great strength king Kong Dharma body. Could it be Ai's body is really like the Dharma body, invulnerable? Thinking of this, he waved his hand and took out the black iron needle. Then, he gently pierced it into his ring finger. Sure enough, the black iron needle only touched the surface of the finger. It was as if it touched an extremely hard iron plate and could not pierce any further. Haha, wonderful, wonderful. Xiao Hua almost jumped up and thought, this is just the 3rd level of cultivation. If I can cultivate all 9 levels of the great strength King Kong Dharma body, wouldn't I not be afraid of any magic weapon? But if even the black iron needle can't pierce the finger, how can this cloud-suppressing seal be used as a blood sacrifice? Xiao Hua was a little worried. He then picked up the black iron needle and pierced it into his finger. Fortunately, he finally squeezed out a drop of blood. Xiao Hua breathed a sigh of relief and pointed his finger. That drop of blood flew into the air. Xiao Hua's hands flicked out a series of seals, not into the drop of blood, but into the drop of blood. Along with the seals, that drop of blood gradually elongated and thinned. Finally, it formed a shape similar to the cloud-suppressing seal. Go! Xiao Hua pointed his finger, and the cloud-suppressing seal floating beside him flew into the drop of blood. Then, Xiao Hua's hands continued to cast seals, and that drop of blood slowly soaked into the cloud-suppressing seal. As Xiao Hua's drop of blood entered, another drop of dirty blood was gradually forced out from the other side. Xiao Hua stopped his spell and waved his hand. A wisp of true samadhi fire flew out and burned the bloodstains. Immediately, the bloodstains disappeared without a trace. Immediately after, Xiao Hua swallowed a soul-gathering pill and closed his eyes. As he circulated his energy, he began to imbue different techniques into the cloud-suppressing seal. Under Xiao Hua's refinement, the cloud-suppressing seal slowly began to churn in the air, gradually revealing traces of brilliance. 1 day, 2 days, all the way until the 5th day of the 2nd phase of the Feather Immortal Gathering, Xiao Hua remained in seclusion, refining the cloud-suppressing seal in his quiet room. At this moment, there was only a huge illusory formation left in the plaza. Within it, there were 2 cultivators fighting for first place in the Feather Immortal Gathering. One of them was Xuanyin School's disciple, Zhuo Qingyan, who had long reached the late stage of the 12th layer of qi refining. The other was also someone Xiao Hua was familiar with, Yin Guichong, who had recently reached the peak of the 12th layer of qi refining. At this moment, the battle between the 2 was nearing its end. Both of their faces were pale. It was obvious that they had used up a lot of their magic power. Zhuo Qingyuan had a flying sword above his head. It was swallowing and spitting out a sword ray that was half a foot long. It stared at Yin Guichong like a spiritual snake. On the other hand, the magic tool above Yin Guichong's head was an emerald green thing that looked like a bamboo tube. At this moment, it was also floating in the air, eager to attack. Go! Zhuo Qingyuan roared angrily. The flying sword suddenly flew out and pierced towards Yin Guichong's chest with incomparable speed. Yin Guichong did not hesitate. He swiped his index and middle fingers in the air. With a pung sound, a ray of brilliance like water spurted out from the bamboo tube. Under Yin Guichong's command, the brilliance blocked the front of the bamboo tube. Seeing that the flying sword was about to pierce the brilliance, Zhuo Qingyuan's two index fingers suddenly separated. The flying sword suddenly split into two. It went around the brilliance on both sides and pierced towards Yun Guicheng's waist from side. This sudden change was certainly out of everyone's expectations. However, Yun Guicheng was not slow despite his shock. He patted his waist, and a belt that was 4 fingers wide appeared from his waist. Then, countless runes flew out from the belt and spun in front of the flying sword. When the flying sword came into contact with these runes, it was as if it had sunk into a quagmire. It could only stab 3 inches into the belt. It was impossible for it to stab half an inch further. When Zhuo Qingyuan saw this, he gritted his teeth slightly. He patted his hand, and a shiny, spiritual talisman appeared in his hand. He urged his magic power and pasted it on his forehead. Roar! Zhuo Qingyuan roared. On Zhuo Qingyuan's forehead, an inch-long horn gradually appeared. A faint outline gradually appeared on his arms and back. Giant spiritual talisman. The people watching the battle were shocked. This spiritual talisman was indeed powerful, but the magic power required was also very high. Usually, only Foundation Establishment stage cultivators could support it. Not many Qi Refinement stage cultivators dare to try it, unless they felt that their magic power was comparable to that of Foundation Establishment stage cultivators. Zhuo Qingyuan's physical body gradually grew bigger under the effect of the giant spiritual talisman. He was gradually taller than the previous two. However, what surprised everyone was that Yun Guicheng, who was in front of Zhuo Qingyuan, did not panic at all. He just silently watched the changes in Zhuo Qingyuan's physical body, deep in thought. Seeing that Zhuo Qingyuan's giant spiritual talisman was about to succeed, Yun Guicheng also patted his hand and laughed. Since fellow Zhuo wants to compete with magic power, I will accompany you. As he spoke, a shiny spiritual talisman appeared in his hand, and he also pasted it on his body. Roar! With almost the same roar, Yun Guicheng's physical body also began to transform. However, the shape of the transformation was slightly different. This was great. Everyone in the square showed excitement and admiration on their faces. Since both of them had used the giant spirit talisman, then the final battle would be a direct competition of magic power. Whoever had a deeper cultivation and more powerful magic power would be able to create more energy, and that person would be able to defeat the other party. This was a real fight, without the help of any magic tools. Fight! Zhuo Qingyuan waited for the giant spiritual talisman to fully take effect. He shouted impatiently and waved his fist. His huge body rushed towards Yun Guicheng. Although Yun Guicheng was half a step slower, his giant spiritual talisman was different. The huge beast transformed from his physical body was slightly smaller than Zhuo Qingyuan. Seeing Zhuo Qingyuan's fist, which was bigger than a drum, coming towards him, he also raised his fist to meet it. Boom! It was a loud sound. The whole square shook, and everyone's ears hurt from the vibrations. My goodness, how can he be so powerful? Everyone in the square was so shocked that they didn't know what to say. This illusory magic array had one advantage. The images inside the illusory magic array could be seen clearly, but the sound was pitifully soft, almost inaudible. The two transformed giant spirit beasts could actually shake the square outside the illusory magic array. What kind of magical ability was this? However, the people standing at the edge of the square immediately felt that something was wrong. It was as if the tremors and sounds came from behind them. When they inadvertently turned around to look, they saw that the distant pavilion where the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples lived had already collapsed by now. In the midst of the ruins, Xiaohua, covered in dirt and grime, slowly crawled out of it. Damn it, this cloud-suppressing seal really lives up to its reputation. Xiaohua patted off the dirt on his body. He was both excited and vexed as he thought to himself. This young master was just testing its power a little. How could I accidentally break the restrictions of the quiet room? Oh no, half of the pavilion? That's right. After Xiaohua successfully refined the cloud-suppressing seal, he very casually patted the wall of his quiet room. It was just a very light pat. There was absolutely no other meaning behind it. Really? As a result, the restrictions on the wall were like paper. The wall also collapsed one after another, as if it was made of mud. The Taiching sect's disciple who was on duty in front of the pavilion looked at the embarrassed Xiaohua in a daze. He didn't know whether he should go up and apologize or not. He should ask if it was his doing. Just as Xiaohua made the noise, the result of the battle in the illusion array was also revealed. Yin Zhaocheng suddenly used his elbow to hit the back of Zhuo Qingyuan's neck. Zhuo Qingyuan felt a burst of dizziness. The true qi in his body became slightly sluggish, and his magic power couldn't be transmitted to the giant spirit talisman in time. Zhuo Qingyuan's entire body was like a deflated bubble, rapidly shrinking. The scales on his body also rapidly disappeared. When he returned to his original state, Zhuo Qingyuan's face was pale. He took a medicinal pill, cupped his hands, and said, "Fellow Taoist Yun's magic power is too strong. I can't compare. I admit defeat." Hearing Zhuo Qingyuan's words, Yun Zhaocheng took the giant spirit talisman and gradually returned to his original state. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior martial brother Zhuo intentionally let me win. I don't dare accept it. Forget it. The new generation replaces the old. I am ashamed." As he said that, Zhuo Qingyuan activated his magic card and flew out of the illusion array. He went back to his quiet room. Seeing that the first place of the Feather Immortal gathering had been decided, everyone was still looking at the collapsed pavilion of the Imperial Thunder sect strangely. They didn't know what had happened. "Well, disciples, it's already dusk. Everyone, go back to your quiet rooms to rest. Tomorrow morning, the Taiching sect will give out rewards to the top few disciples according to the usual practice." Renju was flying in the air again. She said loudly, "Moreover, the Taiching sect has a surprise for the top 32 disciples tomorrow." There's a surprise tomorrow? What is it? The group of cultivators couldn't help but think of Dao Jing, who had welcomed them here. That cultivator who liked to keep them in suspense. It seemed that tomorrow was the time to break the suspense. As for the collapsed pavilion of the Imperial Thunder sect, the Taiching sect didn't ask too much. After all, Xiaohua was cultivating, and it involved some secrets. Even the disciples of the Taiching sect would occasionally have something like this happen, but it wasn't as loud and imposing as this. Moreover, there were many pavilions in the Bright Realm. They could just find some more. The disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect were cultivating in their new quiet rooms with their eyes closed, waiting for the surprise the next day. Xiaohua was sitting in front of Sun Shu and Qian Diheng, listening to them talking about the excitement of the past few days. Chapter 1636. Since the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect had moved to a new pavilion, they naturally had to change their magic tablets. The Taiching sect disciple who helped them change their magic tablets looked at Xiaohua several times. He himself was the clearest about how solid the restrictions set up in the pavilion were. Xiaohua, a mere qi condensation disciple, was actually able to break the restrictions and even topple half of the pavilion. This method was something he couldn't understand, even if he cracked his head. After the Taiching sect disciple left, the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect returned to their quiet rooms. Looking at Qian Diheng's gaze, Xiaohua looked innocent. He waved his hand and said, "Senior brother Qian, don't look at me. I definitely don't know about this matter. It has nothing to do with me." Qian Diheng laughed and said, "I didn't say anything. Why are you in such a hurry to explain?" Xiaohua shrugged. When he was about to speak, Sun Shu laughed and said, "At that time, there was only junior brother Xiao in the pavilion. If it has nothing to do with him, no one will believe it. Although I was the only one, but I'm also a victim. I really don't know anything." Fine. If it's not you, then it's not you. You didn't say anything." Qian Diheng waved his hand and opened the restriction formation of his quiet room. He said, "Junior brother Xiao, senior sister Sun, are you interested in tasting some spiritual fruits in Ai's room?" Looking at Qian Diheng's sincere gaze, Xiaohua was thoughtful. Qian Diheng's cultivation was average. Although he relied on the care of his elders and a defensive magic treasure to come to the Feather Immortal Assembly from their interactions during this period of time, he was a cultivator with some genuine temperament. He was much more pleasing to the eye than Kun Fian and the others. Therefore, Xiao Hua didn't hold back. He cupped his hands and said, "Eyes taste is bland, so I'm a chatterbox." Sun Shu's position in the Sun Thunder Palace might be lower than Qian Diheng's in the Heavenly Thunder Palace, but it wasn't that far off. He also cupped his hands and entered the quiet room. Qian Diheng took out some spiritual fruits from his storage bag. The three of them ate while talking about the competition in the past few days. Just as we expected, Senior Kun Fei Yin Kun's cultivation is limited after all. Even though she tried her best and exhausted all her mana, she still stopped at the second round. As Sun Shu spoke, there was a hint of schadenfreude in his tone. According to I, if junior brother Xiao were to go, he would at least reach the third round. Xiao Hua didn't say anything. Regarding this matter, since it was already in the past, and it was ordered by Jinyu, he could only pretend that nothing had happened. However, Qian Diheng didn't mention it at all. Senior brother Qian Mo is still the best, actually snatching the 8th place. As expected, Qian Diheng immediately changed the topic. Senior brother Qian Mo is so powerful, yet he's only ranked 8th? Xiao Hua felt a little strange. In his opinion, Qian Mo should at least be in the top 4. Hee, junior brother Xiao. 8th place is already not bad. Qian Diheng said in a low voice, "My Imperial Thunder Sect is not at the forefront in the country of Xi's cultivation world. Xuanyan Sect, Qiqiao Sect, and Shanghua Sect are all stronger than us. Even Huanhua Sect is not much better than us. Moreover, the cultivation level of our country of Xi is slightly worse than that of Meng country and Lian country. Think about it. In the 13 cultivation countries, my Imperial Thunder Sect can only be considered as below average. I heard that in the past, we occasionally got into the top 8, but most of the time, we were ranked 9th or 10th. So, senior brother Qian Mo's 8th place is not bad," Xiao Hua said with a smile. Of course, you didn't see Martial Uncle Jin use happy face when he saw Qian Mo get 8th place. Sun Shu snorted and said. After listening for a moment, Xiao Hua asked tentatively, "Then, how is Huanhua Sect's result?" "Huanhua Sect? Damn it!" Qian Diheng slapped his thigh and shouted, "Junior brother Xiao, you missed a lot of exciting things." Xiao Hua's eyes lit up and said anxiously, "What? Does Huanhua Sect have any powerful disciples?" Of course, in this year's Feather Immortal Assembly, Huanhua Sect was in the limelight. Qian Diheng gnashed his teeth and said, "The strength of the Huanhua Sect should be similar to that of my Imperial Thunder Sect. According to this poor Taoist estimation, they should be ranked 9th, 10th, or 7th at most. But didn't you see? The first place of this Feather Immortal Assembly is actually a disciple of Huanhua Sect, and he doesn't look very old. How can he be so powerful? I really don't understand." Sun Shu said angrily. It seemed that she wouldn't be angry if the disciples of Qiqiao Sect, Shanghua Sect, or Xuanyan School got first place, but Huanhua Sect couldn't. Qian Diheng also didn't understand and said in a low voice, "Listen, usually the first place of this Feather Immortal Assembly is either Meng country or Lian country. The 3 sects of our country of Xi don't have many chances to take first place, but today, the first 2 places are actually disciples of our country of Xi. This really puzzles me." Seeing that the 2 of them were talking about things that he didn't care about, Xiao Hua was a little anxious and asked, "What about the other disciples of Huanhua Sect? I'm afraid they didn't have any outstanding performances, right?" "No, you're wrong. This time, the Flower Washing Sect is really fierce. Besides this guy called Yin Jichong, there's also someone called Fairy Hongxia. She's also killing everyone. If I hadn't met this Yin Jichong and given up on my own initiative, the first place might have been Fairy Hongxia." Xiao Hua's eyes lit up, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Although the feelings in his heart were unknown to others, he was happy to hear about her and know that she had succeeded in her cultivation. Sun Shu said again. You don't know, junior brother Xiao, when Red Dawn Fairy went on stage that day, many young disciples cheered for her. That atmosphere, TSK, 90% of the disciples went to watch Red Dawn Fairy's battle. Yes, and 10% of the disciples were female. Qian Diheng blinked and smiled. Sun Shu glanced at Qian Diheng and said, It seems that some disciples of my Imperial Thunder sect still wander around in front of Huan Hua sect pavilion. Tisk, Qian Diheng didn't hide anything and said, There's an old saying among mortals that a gentleman wants a fair and graceful woman. This humble Taoist is handsome and talented, and is also a disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Palace. I'm a perfect match for that fairy Hongxia. Even if I have to ask the sect leader of the Rinsing Flower sect for help, this humble Taoist backbone will still be strong. Ha ha! Sun Shu laughed. It seems that there are many disciples with such thoughts. There's probably one in each of the 13 sects of cultivation. When Qian Diheng heard this, he was a little dejected and said helplessly, That's right. Who asked Fairy Hongxia to fight a few days ago? Her red silk fluttered in the wind, and she looked valiant and formidable. Her methods were amazing, and she was even more beautiful than a celestial being. If she couldn't attract so many disciples, then we male cultivators would be blind. What a pity, Sun Shu said mockingly. Her senior brother is the champion of this feather immortal gathering, and they're a match made in heaven. I'm afraid you don't have a chance. How can that Yun Jiechong compare to I? I already found out that Yun Jiechong is just a disciple of Su Yinyan's family. His background can't be compared to I. But what if Red Dawn Fairy likes him? Sun Shu said mercilessly. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's face turned black, and he wanted to leave several times. When the two finally stopped, he quickly asked, Right? What's the surprise tomorrow? Fellow Taoists, do you have any news? Who knows? It has nothing to do with us. Qian Diheng quickly waved his hand. It's already said that it's for the top 32 disciples. Who would think more? Then he said to Sun Shu, Right, senior sister Sun, what do you think I should do to attract Red Dawn Fairy's attention? Xiao Hua snorted and stood up. Senior brothers, you can think about it slowly here. I'm going back to rest. I still have to wait for the Taiching sect surprise tomorrow morning. Hey, junior brother Xiao. Sun Shu stood up and wanted to chase after him, but was stopped by Qian Diheng. Senior sister Sun, give me an idea. If I can beat that Yun Jiechong, wouldn't I also win glory for my Imperial Thunder sect? Listening to Qian Diheng's words, Xiao Hua had mixed feelings. He slowly walked out of the quiet room, and then out of the pavilion. It was already dusk, and the setting sun was like a fire that dyed half the sky red. The dark red sunlight shone on Xiao Hua's young face, revealing a hint of coldness. Xiao Hua's curved eyes were looking at a pavilion not far from here. In front of the pavilion, there were more than 10 young disciples scattered. Although they were all looking in different directions and didn't seem to have anything to do with the pavilion, their eyes were all glancing at the entrance of the pavilion from time to time. Could it be that this pavilion belongs to those two sword cultivators? These disciples are still drooling over that magic treasure? Xiao Hua was a little confused. But at this moment, a Taiching sect disciple came out from inside and said loudly, Fairy Hongxia replied to everyone, There is still a competition tomorrow, so she can't meet everyone. Please forgive her. After saying that, the Taiching sect disciple went in. Xiao Hua's face became even more unsightly. He snorted from his nose, stomped his feet, and turned around to enter the pavilion. Not to mention that Xiao Hua had returned to his new quiet room to cultivate. In another pavilion, Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuhe were respectfully sitting across from Renju. Zhang Yutong handed over a storage pouch, only to hear Zhang Yutong say, This is the thing I told Senior before. Please check it. Renju took it, opened it, and put it away. At the same time, she handed over another storage pouch and said with a smile, You two little friends are really good at scheming. I had no choice but to give you this profound spirit grass. Zhang Yutong reached out to take it and put it away very carefully. Zhang Yuhe said with a smile, That is Senior's care and concern. We sisters are very clear about it. Haha, I'm sure the two of you have gained a lot over the past few days, right? It's all right. There are a lot of miscellaneous things, but they're still not as generous as your sect. Zhang Yutong said with a smile. We have already dealt with the matter. Today, we would like to bid farewell to Senior. Tomorrow is the last day of the Feather Immortal Gathering. There is still a competition tomorrow. Don't the two of you want to participate? Zhang Yuhi's eyes lit up. She said, Yes, yes. It's not easy for us to come. Chapter 16:37. Sister. Zhang Yutong looked at her and said, You are already in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Why are you fighting with a disciple who is only in the Qi refining realm? Don't you feel ashamed? Also, if we don't leave now, when will we? Then, she bowed and asked Deming, Is the Hao territory peaceful these days? Deming knew what Zhang Yutong was asking about and nodded. The disciples of the 3 kingdoms and 13 sects of the cultivation world are all fighting in Hao territory. The whereabouts of the two of you have not been leaked. Please don't worry. Thank you, Senior Deming. My sister and I will definitely report this to our sect leader. We will definitely repay your kindness. You are our guests. We are just doing our duty as hosts. Deming said with a smile. Then, Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yue bowed and said goodbye. Under Deming's escort, they left the Hao territory quietly without attracting anyone's attention. The next morning, all the disciples gathered in the plaza. Renju followed the rules of the Feather Immortal Assembly and distributed the rewards to the disciples. Even though Xiao Hua had entered the top 32, he didn't have any chance of winning. He didn't even get a single pill. After giving the last magic weapon to Yun Jiechong, Renju said with a smile, When you came to the Hao territory, I told you why the Feather Immortal Assembly was held here. It is related to an item in the Hao territory. This item is also the reward for the last battle of the Feather Immortal Assembly. When the disciples heard this, they looked at the high platform behind Renju. The high platform was the same as it was a few days ago. No divine thoughts could penetrate it, so they couldn't see what it was. Now, it is time to reveal the mystery. Renju pointed with a smile and said, This item fell from the sky a few years ago. It is right here. As he spoke, he made a hand seal and a blue brilliance hit the high platform. The high platform melted like an iceberg and gradually revealed what was inside. A sword embryo that was 3 feet long and as thick as a fist was inserted in the middle of the high platform. Prajna. Seeing this familiar sword embryo, Xiao Hua couldn't help but think of the name of this sword embryo. At the same time, Xiao Hua's mind exploded. This Prajna heavy sword was originally mine. This heavy sword fell from the heavens, didn't I also fall from the heavens? Where did I come from? And where did I go? As the Prajna heavy sword was revealed, Renju continued to introduce it. This thing is a sword embryo. It should be a sword embryo. However, this thing was different from ordinary sword embryos. The strangest thing is that this sword embryo can't be controlled by divine thoughts, and it is shockingly heavy. Wow! Everyone in the square began to whisper to each other. Fellow Taoist Renju, according to what you said, isn't this a demonic tool? Xiong Fei of the Washing Flower sect was very proud at this time and said with a smile. Renju shook her head and said, The first disciple who found this thing also had the same idea. Our humble sect leader thought that it was a demonic weapon from the war between immortals and devils that fell into our humble sect. But the weight of this sword embryo is truly shocking. It is much heavier than any demonic weapon that our humble sect has seen. Secondly, although demonic weapons can't be controlled by divine thoughts, they can be placed in storage bags. After this thing is placed in a storage bag, the storage bag space formation will gradually be crushed by the sword embryo. All the disciples were surprised. After our humble sect's refiner's appraisal, the quality of this sword embryo is not something from the Donrain continent. Moreover, this sword embryo can't be tempered by ordinary refining methods. There should be a very peculiar method to refine it into a sword, and not a flying sword. After all, this refined sword cannot be controlled by divine thoughts. Then what is its use? All the disciples were rather suspicious. As if she heard the disciples' doubts, Rendezvous said with a smile, "I don't know how to use this thing, and neither do the elders of our Tai Ching sect. However, according to our Tai Ching sect's immortal Yuluan's guess, this thing must be an immortal item from outside the heavens. If any fated disciple obtains it, he might be able to find the true meaning of the great Tao from it." Ah! All the disciples were pleasantly surprised, although they also felt that Rendezvous' words were somewhat unreliable. If it was really so precious, why would it be placed here? Moreover, why would it be given to others so generously? However, when they thought about what Rendezvous said, there was a trace of possibility. They could not help but feel a fire in their hearts. This sword embryo has been in our Tai Ching sect's bright realm for a long time. Many disciples have also come to subdue it, but in the end, no one was fated to obtain it. When our humble sect's Master Ching Su saw that the Feather Immortal Assembly was being held in our Tai Ching sect, he opened up a good door and held the assembly in the bright realm. If any fellow cultivator is fated to obtain this sword embryo, it will be considered a good deed for our Tai Ching sect. What is considered fate? Shanghua sect's Li Mingqing asked. Rendezvous pointed at the sword embryo. First of all, you must have the ability to stand out from the 32 disciples. Secondly, you must be able to take this sword embryo away. Fellow Rendezvous, please enlighten us. What is considered to have the ability? Among the 32 disciples, apart from our Tai Ching sect's disciples, all of them have entered the illusory array and fought with each other. The time limit is the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. If any disciple can remain in the illusory array until the end, that disciple has the ability. As long as he picks up this sword embryo will be fated to him. What if after the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, many disciples are still in the illusory array? Naturally, there won't be any disciples fated to obtain this sword embryo. Rendezvous smiled. This battle is similar to the second round. There is no time limit to withdraw. As long as you feel that your life is in danger, you can immediately activate your magic tablet and withdraw from the illusory array. Of course, if any disciple insists on not withdrawing, they will be responsible for their own lives. That's good. Everyone agreed. Clap, clap. Rendezvous clapped her hands and activated her magic power. A huge illusory array emerged from the high platform and wrapped around the sword embryo. Disciples, the time it takes for an incense stick to burn has already begun. If we don't enter the illusory array, when will we? Rendezvous shouted. With a flick of her sleeve, a lit incense stick flew into the air. Go! Xiao Hua and the others lightly reprimanded. Their figures flew out and entered the illusory array. When they entered the illusory array, they saw that their surroundings were much more spacious. However, everyone was gathered in a nearby area. It was very obvious that the disciples of Shi, Meng, and Lian were clearly divided. Each of them surrounded each other and looked at each other covetously. Because they were restraining each other, the three groups of people didn't dare to move casually. The others weren't in a hurry, but Xiao Hua was. He knew that this sword embryo was his, and he was determined to obtain it. Seeing that time was passing by in this confrontation, after the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, he wouldn't have the opportunity to obtain the sword embryo so easily. Thus, Xiao Hua whispered to Qian Mo, who was beside him, "Senior brother Qian, this kind of confrontation won't have any results. What do you think of this little brother going to sneak attack the Meng disciples?" "Great. The Meng cultivators are few. As long as you make a move, I will also release my magic weapon. Let's beat the Meng cultivators out first." Qian Mo was very strange. This junior brother, who usually didn't rush to the front, was suddenly anxious. However, he was also willing to have someone take the lead. Okay. Hearing this, Xiao Hua flew to the front of the Shi cultivators. Everyone was surprised to see Xiao Hua, who had the lowest cultivation, fly out. The Meng and Lian disciples activated their magic power and were slightly on guard. Xiaohua also didn't hesitate. As soon as he flew out from the crowd, he immediately rushed towards the Meng disciples. "Oof, you're courting death." The Meng disciples who didn't know the details sneered. A few disciples in front of them activated their magic weapons and attacked Xiaohua. Xiaohua was afraid that others wouldn't make a move. Seeing someone use their magic weapon, he was overjoyed. He clapped his hands and took out dozens of top-grade fireball talismans. Like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers, he threw them at the Meng disciples. He immediately flew to the side in the direction of the Lian kingdom, as if he was trying to avoid the Dharma artifact. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Dozens of fireball talismans sounded. The Meng disciples couldn't stand still and revealed a gap. The Shi disciples were already prepared. Seeing such a gap, how could they not add insult to injury? Everyone took advantage of the chaos and activated their magic weapons, throwing them in the direction of the fireball talismans. The Shi disciples knew how to add insult to injury. How could the Lian disciples not know? In particular, Xiaohua's fireball talisman had provoked quite a few people. Quite a few magic treasures were chasing after Xiaohua. Xiaohua was wandering around the Ripple State, and magic treasures were also flying around the Ripple State. How could the Ripple State's disciples calm down? In an instant, the whole scene went out of control. All the disciples no longer cared about anything else. On one hand, they protected themselves. On the other hand, they used all kinds of methods to mercilessly attack the unfamiliar disciples. Xiaohua, who had successfully instigated a fight, immediately brought out Jingchen. That earthy yellow brilliance firmly protected him. Then, he reached out his hand and took out the devil's spear from the space. His figure swayed repeatedly, leaving behind a string of afterimages. His figure flew back and forth among the crowd in a very natural and unrestrained manner. Xiaohua flew quickly. The space of this illusion array was not big, and it was abnormally chaotic. Xiaohua was like a fish in water. In just a moment, he had already successfully attacked 4 disciples. These disciples were forced to activate their magic tablets in a hurry and escape far away. The disciples in the square were surprised at this time. No one would have thought that the disciple with the lowest cultivation would actually have such methods. Rumble, Xiaohua took advantage of the chaos and shot out a string of fireball talismans. Similarly, the other disciples were also red-eyed. All kinds of fireball talismans, icicle talismans, confinement talismans, and so on were thrown out without any regard for their lives. Countless explosions, countless flashes of brilliance, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the entire illusion array was scattered in an instant. Wah! A waterfall-like fiery light fell from the sky, pouncing toward Xiaohua. Xiaohua's figure twisted, and he flew forward slightly, dodging the fiery light. However, the 2 disciples of the rippling country beside him were extremely anxious. The defensive magic tools in their hands only lasted for a moment before their brilliance dimmed. Seeing that the fiery light was about to burn their bodies, the 2 of them helplessly activated their magic tablets, disappearing from their original spot. Just as the 2 people left, not far from them, a dazzling brilliance flashed. A flying sword blossomed with 10,000 rays of brilliance and pierced towards the direction of the flame. Chapter 1638. Chaos, Great Chaos, Chaos. This was the current situation inside the illusion array. In the beginning, the disciples of each country were still gathered together, united against the outside. However, countless yellow talismans and numerous magic weapons were flying around in the air, throwing the previous formation into chaos. The disciples of each country were mixed together, and the disciples of each sect were also mixed together. No one could see who was who. Seeing a disciple coming over, without hesitation, they activated their magic weapons and flew over, regardless of whether this disciple was familiar or not. Every disciple inside the illusion array had their own divine senses. Their divine senses were mixed together and it was also very messy. Xiao Hua saw a flying sword flying toward him from afar. It seemed to be aimed at him. He released his Buddhist sense and saw a disciple of the Nanming sect behind him. The disciple was holding a basin-shaped magic weapon. A light blue light was emitting from the basin-shaped magic weapon. The light blue light condensed into fist-sized balls and flew toward a disciple of the Utopia faction. Therefore, Xiaohua was not in a hurry to dodge. When the flying sword was indeed close, his 2 feet slightly staggered, dodging the flying sword in an instant. Naturally, that Nanming sect disciple also had divine senses to protect his body and had already seen his surroundings clearly. However, when Xiao Hua dodged the flying sword, he did not have time to react. That flying sword was 3 inches wide and 1 foot long. It was surrounded by flames and was aggressive. Before it could pierce him, that Nanming sect disciple felt that the magic power on the flying sword was profound. At this time, it was already too late to dodge. The Nanming sect disciple had no choice but to inject his magic power into a magic tablet that he had already prepared. A milky white brilliance descended from the sky and quickly covered him, blocking the flying sword outside. As the brilliance disappeared, the Nanming sect disciple was also out of the illusion array. Another one down. Xiao Hua sneered. He activated his witchcraft dust, and a strand of yellow brilliance was instantly released, piercing towards the Xian music sect disciple who sent out the flying sword. The Xian music sect disciple was a bit far away. Seeing Xiao Hua attack, he was not nervous. He clapped his hands, and a faint brilliance appeared on his body, as if he had a protective magic weapon. Unfortunately, before Xiao Hua's witchcraft dust could attack, the figure of a Shanghua sect disciple who was sent flying blocked the brilliance of the witchcraft dust. Ouch! The disciple turned pale with fright. He no longer cared about anything else, and similarly activated his Dharma card to escape. Wu Chen's attack was slightly blocked by this Shanghua sect's cultivator, causing his speed to decrease. Xiao Hua wanted to look for the flying sword sect's disciple who attacked him just now, but he was already blocked by someone else. Xiao Hua was just about to take out a fireball talisman when all of a sudden, a slender rhombus-shaped magic artifact suddenly flew out from under his feet. It actually dodged his Buddhist sense and divine sense, and obliquely stabbed toward his calf. Isn't this a black iron needle? Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. Without thinking, his entire figure suddenly retreated. With a loud bang, Xiao Hua's back unexpectedly bumped into another cultivator. Xiao Hua's strength was great. In an instant, he knocked that disciple upside down, and Xiao Hua's flying speed was only slightly affected. Immediately, he changed direction and used the hibernating thunder escape to fly away. That black iron needle-like magic artifact chased after Xiao Hua, but it couldn't catch up to him. It immediately changed direction again and stabbed toward the disciple who was knocked down by Xiao Hua. That disciple was a bit dizzy. He wanted to activate his Dharma card, but he was somewhat reluctant. In this moment of hesitation, the magic artifact had already quietly dodged his divine sense and stabbed into the disciple's back. That disciple angrily shouted, but it was already too late. This magic artifact was even more insidious than the black iron needle. The yellow talisman protecting his body only shook slightly before it was pierced, and it pierced right through his chest. When that disciple's corpse fell from midair, that needle-like magic artifact flashed again and flew into the crowd of disciples, disappearing without a trace. Seeing that a cultivator had fallen, the crowd who still had a trace of hope in their hearts no longer dared to be negligent. They either used all their magic power to shoot out their magic artifacts, or used their Dharma cards to escape from the illusion array in a panic. In just a short moment, there were less than 10 disciples left in the illusion array. Fellow Taoists, do you not want to withdraw? A very scholarly voice rang out. Xiao Hua frowned and looked over. He saw that about 100 feet in front of him was a handsome man. There was an emerald green bamboo tube magic tool above his head. It emitted an emerald green brilliance and emitted a light barrier from top to bottom. Not only did it cover the man, but it also protected a female cultivator with skin whiter than snow and red clothes like a rainbow next to him. In the female cultivator's hand, there was a red silk ribbon that was like a flood dragon and spirit snake, cruising up and down her body. Yin Guichong. Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed slightly, and a sour and ruthless feeling arose from the bottom of his heart. Yin Guichong pointed with his finger and smiled. This item is something that I desire. Just now, I and my junior sister have already sent away several fellow Taoists. If you're tactful, I will accept this kindness. If not, haha, just pretend that I didn't say that. After hearing Yin Guichong's words, among the crowd, several people looked at each other, including Zhuoqing Yuan. He knew that he was not Yin Guichong's opponent, and besides, Fairy Hongxia was beside Yin Guichong. Therefore, Zhuoqing Yuan used his Dharma card to withdraw from the illusion array. He was really not interested in this strange sword embryo. Seeing that Zhuoqing Yuan took the lead to withdraw, the remaining Xuanyin school disciple also withdrew. Then, except for Xiao Hua and two other cultivators, the other disciples all left the illusion array. Of the two cultivators, one was short with an ordinary face, and the other had a square face with rough and dark skin. Fellow Taoist Xiao. The short cultivator cupped his hands and said, I am Zhang Xian from the Utopia faction, and this is I's junior brother, Yang Fangcheng. I have seen fellow Taoist Zhao's fights twice, and I admire you very much. If fellow Taoist Xiao joins forces with I's junior brother, you won't be afraid of these two fellow Taoists from the Huanhua sect. Hearing this, Xiao Hua was slightly disdainful in his heart. You two against two is just right. Why are you pulling me? If I help you wait for those two, they will be dealt with by those two next. Why should I interfere? Seeing that Xiao Hua was silent, Zhang Xian didn't say anything more. He pointed to the half-moon-shaped magic weapon floating in midair and said with a smile, Since that's the case, my Utopia faction's disciple will meet your Huanhua sect's disciple. As soon as he finished speaking, the half-moon-shaped magic weapon whistled and spun as it flew towards Yin Guichong's chest. His junior brother, Yang Fangcheng, didn't say anything. He also pointed his finger, and a golden bead spun as it flew towards Yin Guichong. Good. Yin Guichong stood up and shouted, Look at my magic weapon. The bamboo tube covering the two of them suddenly enlarged, and the splendor sprinkled down turned into a flat light curtain, blocking himself and Hongxia Fairy. The remaining half of the bamboo tube, under Yin Guichong's control, turned into a patch of green bamboo and flew towards the two magic weapons. Zhang Xian's magic weapon circled and flew close to Yin Guichong. Numerous half-moon-shaped splendors were emitted from the magic weapon and hit the bamboos. As the bamboos dissipated, the half-moon-shaped splendors also disappeared. However, Yin Guichong had a large number of bamboos, and many of them were still flying towards the two of them. At this moment, Yang Fangcheng's bead also arrived. Under the control of his magic power, the bead expanded to a diameter of 1 foot. In an instant, it swept away the remaining bamboos, broke through a golden channel, and hit Yin Guichong's defense directly. At this moment, the disciples in the square understood the situation clearly. Yin Guichong was indeed the champion of the feather immortal meat. His magic power was more profound than either Zhang Xian or Yang Fangcheng of the Utopia faction, but it was still weaker than the two of them combined. However, Hongxia Fairy of the Huanhua sect hadn't made her move yet. Sure enough, when a 1-foot bead hit the light curtain and stretched it a lot, and even the splendor of the light curtain dimmed a lot, Hongxia Fairy made her move. Hongxia Fairy's body was really graceful. When she raised her hand and waved the red silk, it was more like she was dancing than controlling her magic power. Boom! The disciples in the square also cheered, and their hearts were full of admiration. Are all the skills of the Huanhua sect so beautiful? Of course, it was beautiful. The power of the red silk was also amazing. The red silk danced in the air like a spiritual snake, flashing out dozens of red phantoms. The red splendor dyed the air within the illusory array red. In Zhang Xian's mind, the red silk also split into three, flying towards him from different directions. Zhang Xian had never fought with Hong Xia Fairy before, so he naturally hadn't encountered such a strange situation. On one hand, he was controlling his magic power to support his attack on Yun Guicheng. On the other hand, he clenched his teeth and threw out a large number of yellow talismans, trying to block Hong Xia's red silk. With a light swish, one of the three red silks swept across, and all the yellow talismans were sucked into the red silk without making a sound. Zhang Xian squinted his eyes and activated his magic weapon. A few rays of light flew out from the magic weapon and attacked the red silk that had sucked in the yellow talismans. Xiaohua, who was watching the battle from afar, saw this and sighed. There were indeed three red silk in his mind, and he couldn't tell which one was more important. However, he could still observe it with his Buddhist sense. Xiaohua could clearly see that the red silk was constantly switching between the three phantoms. Just as it sucked in Zhang Xian's yellow talismans, the red silk had already turned to another phantasm and was pouncing toward Zhang Xian. Zhang Xian's magic weapon was already attacking the phantasm. Indeed, the splendor of the crescent moon easily penetrated the red silk and flew down. Seeing that his attack had missed, Zhang Xian's heart also felt empty. The two red silk that he hadn't prepared for previously were already flying towards him. Swish! With a soft sound, the red silk flashed. Zhang Xian suddenly raised the heaven and earth spiritual qi around him, which was about a foot away from him, was sucked away by the red silk. Seeing the red silk covering the sky and covering the earth, Zhang Xian sighed and had no choice but to activate the magic tablet. Since Zhang Xian had left, Yang Fancheng naturally couldn't stay any longer. Without waiting for Hong Xia Fairy's red silk to attack him, he followed Zhang Xian's splendor out of the illusory array. Fellow Taoist Xiao, don't tell me you still want to stay here and watch the show? Yun Guicheng kept his magic weapon and stood with his hands by his side. He said to Xiaohua with a smile. That charm was absolutely unparalleled. That tone was absolutely warm. Chapter 1639. Junior Brother Xiao, you and I are old friends. Moreover, you didn't join forces with the disciples of the Utopia faction just now. You must be thinking of old times. I appreciate your kindness. When I return to the country of Xi, I will find an opportunity to repay you. Yin Guicheng said to himself. Fairy Hong Xia took back the red silk. The red clouds in the sky were gathered in the red silk. Together with her bright red clothes, it really looked like a mass of red clouds. Ha! Xiaohua said with a smile. It's a pity. You and I are old friends, but this sword embryo is also something I like. If Senior Brother Yun is thinking of old times, please leave the illusory spell. I appreciate your kindness. When I return to the country of Xi, I will find an opportunity to visit Senior Brother Yun. Hearing Xiaohua's almost identical words, Yin Guicheng's face was slightly angry. He looked up at the huge candles above the illusory spell. There were still about 30% of them unburned. He activated his magic power and turned to Fairy Hong Xia, saying, Junior sister, stand aside and watch how I deal with this guy. Fairy Hong Xia furrowed her brows and glanced at Xiaohua. She then extended her body and flew between the two of them. Xiaohua also looked at the candles. He activated his magic power and the yellow light scattered down, protecting Xiaohua's body. Then he took out the fire crow net. Looking at the fire crow net flying in the air like a mass of fire, Yin Guicheng also frowned. Cultivators of the Qi refining stage had limited divine thoughts. Generally, they could only activate one magic weapon. Xiaohua took out two magic weapons at once. His divine thoughts must be extraordinary. In particular, Xiaohua was only a cultivator in the beginning stage of the 12th level of the Qi refining stage. How could Yin Guicheng not be alarmed? Senior Brother Yin, be careful. Xiao Hua shouted. The fire crow net spread out. Dozens of fire crows flashing with purple flames flapped their wings and rushed toward Yun Guichong. Yun Guichong curled his lips and activated his magic weapon. Just like before, half of his magic weapon was covered in green light, and the other half turned into a bamboo forest to meet the fire crows. In the previous battle, Xiao Hua had already experienced the might of the Greenwood Giant Staff. At this time, he also knew that these were all would attribute magic tools that extracted the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to take the form. Its essence was still spiritual chi. Therefore, he calmly urged the fire crow to enter the bamboo forest. Boom! With a loud sound, many bamboos were ignited. The fire raven still had some momentum left as it broke through the bamboo forest and rushed toward Yun Guichong's protective light shield. Ouch! Everyone in the square was shocked. Was there even a need to say more? When the fire crows broke through the bamboo, it was true that fire suppressed wood, but it also showed that Xiao Hua's mana was more profound than Yun Guichong's. Fairy Hong Xia's eyes lit up when she saw this. Yun Guichong did not seem to have expected the fire crow to break through the bamboo so easily. While he was in a daze, the fire crow was already in front of him. In a panic, Yun Guichong loosens his grip and shoots out a pile of water-based yellow talismans, such as ice sealing talismans. He wants to stop Xiao Hua's fire crows. Unfortunately, the purple fire crows contain a trace of Samadhi true fire, which is actually extinguished by yellow talismans. Boom! All the yellow talismans are ignited. Yun Guichong sees that the situation is not good. He flies backward and activates his ritual implement to retract all the brilliance. Then he claps his hands and takes out a ritual implement that looks like a feather fan. Yun Guichong is chanting and his hands are also forming a ritual implement. He looks at the fire crows that are rushing over and uses the feather fan to fan them. Yun Guichong's fan is not a big deal. The surrounding spiritual chi of heaven and earth is absorbed by the feather fan. As the feather fan falls, a group of fire crows also flew out from the feather fan. The group of fire crows is different from Xiao Hua's fire crows. Not only are they much bigger than Xiao Hua's fire crows, but the fire crows are also divided into 3 colors. Oh no! Seeing Yun Guichong also take out a fire-based ritual implement, Xiao Hua has a bad feeling. His fire crow net is based on the best fire-based spiritual stones on the ritual implement. Compared to the feather fan, which can absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, it is inferior. Even if his mana is stronger than Yun Guichong's, he can't beat him with ritual implements alone. Sure enough, the group of fire crows surrounded Xiao Hua's fire crows in an instant, burning and biting each other. Although the fire crows of the feather fan are not as good as the fire crows with a true Samadhi fire, they have the advantage in numbers. Moreover, with the constant supply of spiritual chi from the feather fan, Xiao Hua's fire crows have shrunk several times in just a moment. Yun Guichong's face shows a trace of a smile and said kindly, "Junior brother Xiao, why don't you withdraw quickly? We can be considered a draw." Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua glanced at the burning incense and knew that there is not enough time. So he laughed and said, "I haven't used my means yet. Why do you want me to withdraw?" Without waiting for him to finish laughing, Xiao Hua patted the top of his head and opened his mouth. A 3-inch cloud-suppressing seal flew out from his mouth. The cloud-suppressing seal fruit is worthy of being a ritual implement. As soon as it appears, it immediately swallows the spiritual chi of heaven and earth around it and gradually expands. When it flies above Xiao Hua's head, before it is fully activated, it has already turned into a 2-foot seal. Ritual implement? Yun Guichong is obviously knowledgeable. Seeing the movement of the cloud-suppressing seal and the fluctuation of spiritual chi on it, he knows that this thing is difficult to resist. Go, Xiao Hua does not want to waste time. He activates his spiritual chi and the cloud-suppressing seal rises slightly, its size increasing gradually. When it flies to about 20 feet in the air in front of Yun Guichong, it has already turned into the size of a seal. The cloud-suppressing seal emits a strong confinement force that firmly suppresses Yun Guichong. No matter how Yun Guichong struggles, he is unable to break free. Around the cloud-suppressing seal, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth is disturbed and absorbed into the cloud-suppressing seal. The edge of the illusion array has already begun to shake slightly, slowly turning into bright green gas, as if it is about to be annihilated. Although the cloud-suppressing seal is not as big as when it was controlled by Fan Tong, the power of the cloud-suppressing seal is more than twice as strong. Even Yin Guichong, a cultivator in the late stage of Qi refining realm, is no match for this damaged ritual implement. Fairy Hong Xia, who has been watching from the side, is now full of astonishment and even wants to cover her mouth with her hand. Senior Brother Yun, are you going to withdraw from the illusion array? Xiaohua asked coldly. You? Yin Guichong clenches his teeth and looks at Fairy Hong Xia. Fairy Hong Xia is shocked, but she does not seem to have the intention to fight. The red silk around her body is already flowing, looking very normal. Humph, Yin Guichong sneered and said, you are just relying on the power of a damaged ritual implement. If you have the ability, then fight with I in a real fight. Senior Brother Yun, there's not enough time. Xiaohua points with his finger and says with a smile, if you don't withdraw now, then don't blame me for not recognizing you as my senior brother. Fine. Yin Guichong is furious. He slaps his hand, hitting the top of his head. As he raises his palm, a shiny spiritual talisman is taken off by him. Spiritual accumulation talisman? Xiaohua is shocked. Not only is Xiaohua shocked, but Fairy Hong Xia, who is standing in the air, is also shocked. She unconsciously looks at Xiaohua with a worried look. The disciples in the square are even more shocked. They came to the Feather Immortal Gathering to find the opportunity to build their foundation, but they did not expect Yin Guichong to be able to build his foundation and is now at the great circle of Qi refining. What a different pursuit. For a cultivator with such a high level of cultivation, who already had true essence in his true Qi, his magical power was naturally not something a Qi condensation disciple could compare with. If he couldn't win, then who could? Of course, the Feather Immortal Gathering is only limited to Qi refining cultivators. There is no rule that states that Great Circle of Qi refining cannot participate. Yin Guichong cannot be said to have violated the rules of the Feather Immortal Gathering. As Yin Guichong takes off the spiritual accumulation talisman, it immediately turns into a ball of light. Then, the ball of light converges and flies rapidly into Yin Guichong's forehead. The moment the ball of light enters Yin Guichong's forehead, an indescribable pressure comes from Yin Guichong's body. The pressure cannot be suppressed and filled the entire illusory formation. The pressure gradually solidifies, and the confinement force of the cloud-suppressing seal can no longer completely confine Yin Guichong. As the pressure on Yin Guichong's body continues to increase, a strong suction force comes from Yin Guichong's body. The spiritual Qi of heaven and earth in the illusory formation cannot be suppressed and poured into Yin Guichong's body. Crystal beads visible to the naked eye suddenly appear in the entire space. They are the spiritual Qi of heaven and earth that has condensed into dots. However, these dots of spiritual Qi of heaven and earth stop condensing. The spiritual Qi of heaven and earth in the entire illusory formation is insufficient. Moreover, as the spiritual Qi of heaven and earth in the illusory formation is insufficient, the entire formation starts to distort and is about to collapse. Quick, fellow Rinzhu, quickly remove the illusory formation. Xiong Fei is overjoyed and shouted loudly. Rinzhu did not dare to be negligent. With a wave of her sleeve, she cast a spell, and the illusory array disappeared. The bright green gas flew into the condensed spiritual Qi of heaven and earth and poured into Yin Guichong's body. How is it? Junior Brother Xiao, you still want to fight with I? Yin Guichong has built his foundation. The surrounding space is temporarily sealed. The entire cloud-suppressing seal is suspended in midair and cannot be smashed down. Even Xiao Hua himself cannot escape. The most hateful thing is that when Yun Guichong is talking to Xiao Hua, he is activating the Dharma power in his hands. An extremely powerful Dharma seal is forming. Looking at the situation, Yun Guichong does not intend to let Xiao Hua out. Senior Brother Yun. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, Fairy Hong Xia activates the red silk and reluctantly flies in front of Xiao Hua. Shielding him behind her, she says softly, "Fellow Xiao is an old acquaintance of I. Senior brother, please show mercy." Old acquaintance? Ha, good. I hope this is the last time Junior sister pays him back. Yin Guichong is stunned at first. Then, he says with a smile, "On account of Junior sister, as long as he withdraws from the battle and gives up the sword embryo, I will let him go." He. Seeing Fairy Hong Xia standing in front of him, there's an indescribable feeling in his heart. Seeing Fairy Hong Xia turn to look at him, he says with a cold smile, "Fairy Hong Xia, you don't have to do this. The previous favor has been repaid. You and I don't owe each other anything. This sword embryo is something I must get. I will never back out. Fairy Hong, please step aside." Then, Xiao Hua's mind enters the space and awakens the sleeping Goldie and the playing Little Silver. He tells them to get ready. When called, they will come out of the space and attack Yun Guichong. Xiao Hua has not used his true Samadhi fire and demonic hammer. How can he retreat? Unexpectedly, after hearing Xiao Hua's words, Fairy Hong Xia is not angry, nor does she retreat. Instead, she smiles sweetly and says in a low voice, "Since you have made up your mind, I will share it with you." Since participating in the Feather Immortal meet, Fairy Hong Xia has never smiled. She has never faked her expression. Now, when she smiles, it is like a spring breeze that tickles one's heart. Xiao Hua is not the only one who is stunned. Even the disciples in the square are staring at her in shock. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Fairy Hong Xia turned her head and stretched out her fair, jade-like fingers. She gently brushed her cloud-like hair, and at the same time, she took off a sparkling spirit talisman. As the spirit talisman turned into a ball of light and entered the top of her head, the spirit chi of heaven and earth formed a hurricane that was sucked into her body. The surrounding spirit chi of heaven and earth began to condense again. This time, the condensed spirit pearl was 3 times larger than Yun Guichong's. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.